show that encourages anyone and everyone in the speedrun and competitive gaming communities to showcase their passions in games. My name is Amber Cyprin. I will be your host tonight, and if you've got a passion project of your own, you can go to gamesdonequick.com/hotfix to submit it to the show. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, you will see the hot link that directs you to our submissions form, and you can submit to mine or any other show that Hotfix runs. So Passion Project is the best place on Twitch to show the world what you love most in speedrunning and gaming. So if you've got your favorite projects, including grinding speedruns, learning and routing new categories, competing at a high level, or breathing new life into a game in unconventional ways, I want to see it. So before we get started with the showcase that we have planned for tonight, I do have a couple of reminders. First and foremost, if you'd like to support GDQ Hotfix, you can check out the 2024 Season 4 t-shirt at theyeti.com/AGDQ. It looks like this. It is adorable. You can see Coop in a control room with all sorts of logos from our Season 4 shows, including this one. It's really cool. You should go buy it. Go pre-order it. And also, AGDQ 2025 will be live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania from January 5th through the 12th. If you visit gamesdonequick.com and check the AGDQ 2025 important dates section, you'll be able to learn more. And if you are crafty, prize submissions are open from now until December 28th. So you got a little more time to be able to submit prizes for AGDQ 2025. So tonight on Passion Project, we will have a very unique game on. Did you know, when Hideo Kojima was still at Konami, he produced more than just the Metal Gear series? Well, it's true. He produced the series that we're featuring tonight that not only started on the Game Boy Advance, but also had one of the most unique cartridge features the handheld would ever see. Our guest tonight, Draco Dan, and his commentator Funkmaster MP, are presenting Boktai 2 Solar Boy Django, a game whose cartridge includes a photometric light sensor that measures the amount of sunlight and UV rays exposed to it. Draco and Funk, how are you doing tonight? Thank you both so much for being here. I appreciate y'all showing off this super cool game. How are you doing?
I am doing great, thank you. Thank you very much for having us. I think I can speak for both of us when I say I'm very grateful for the opportunity, but Funk, how are you feeling?
Hi, I'm feeling good.
Awesome. Right.
I'm feeling great myself, so why don't you introduce us to this wonderful game here?
Yeah, so this is Boktai 2 Solar Boy Django, as Amber just highlighted. So if I can show this, I might be able to show this on the webcam, I'm not sure. So we have, the lighting may not be great, but I promise there is a weird little doohickey in the cartridge here, which is indeed a solar panel. And I'm not outdoors, I'm in my room. So it's like, you know, how is this going to work? Well, you need tools, you need hardware. So right here I have a UV flashlight. This emits real UV. This is like, you know, if you have high enough exposure, like, it's technically dangerous stuff. So don't try this at home, or at least practice on other methods first, like I did for months before actually attempting runs of this game, and try to limit exposure if you're going to be using this sort of thing, and practice, you know, good health practices either way. Always good to do so. But I think you will all find this run very interesting. If you've not seen this series before, it's going to play essentially like a fusion of Castlevania meets Metal Gear Solid, is the best way that I can describe it. I've been practicing this game for a long time, but only doing active runs of this game in this year, but I'm very happy with where the run has been driven down from. The record was previously held for about 8 years by the same runner, and a complete renaissance in the run's routing has completely transformed it from what it originally looked like. Funk, you used to dabble with this game, right?
Yes, it's been some time, and Draco Dan's not kidding when he says it's a renaissance, because a lot has changed. Especially the fact that now we're sub 2 hours, which is a lot different than what they used to be.
Mm-hmm. Right, so I am going to quit stalling if we would like to get underway, and I'm going to first do a soft reset. So we're going to, first of all, it's very important, you need to calibrate the solar sensor. I need to make sure no UV is hitting the solar sensor and calibrate it. Also need to be playing on the correct day. This is actually very important. You need to start the run on 2004, August 1st at, I mean, you don't need to be precisely at 11:55 p.m., but I prefer to be 11:55 p.m. There is a specific reason for date and time, which I'm sure I'll go into as is more relevant. And before we get started with the run, like, time doesn't begin when you select new game here, because I'm going to put in a password to begin. So this is a series on the GBA, as Amber mentioned, and the password you can put in here is gained from the end of Boktai 1 based on how you play. Using a password allows you to have different starting stats and different starting inventories. We used to have to memorize like a detailed 24-character Japanese password, but someone recently published a script which just pulled all of the possible passwords from game memory, and it turns out that you can use a lot of gibberish passwords such as this.
Oh, I love that.
And this works just fine for the purpose that I'm looking for. So this is going to let me start with an optimal loadout. And on confirming it, this text box here is going to be confirming to start the game. So if we're all ready, I can give a countdown and get started. I'm also going to be running my splits on my end just for the purpose of timing, because I'm a nerd. I don't have split sounds or anything enabled or anything like that. I just care about timing my own runs. So if we're ready, everyone?
All right, I'm ready to go.
All right, so we're going to get started here in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good luck, have fun.
Thank you. So yeah, Boktai 2, Solo Boy Django. It's like Castlevania meets Metal Gear Solid, as I say. We start with this exposition dump that's in Japanese, so if you're not fluent, I'm sorry. I'll try to keep you up to date with how the plot of this game goes. It's standard video gamey anime stuff to begin with, where this is kind of like a doomsday prophecy, and Django, the titular Solo Boy, is going to be going to the city of San Miguel to figure out the source of some undead activity that's going on. I'm going to start with going through a little tutorial that teaches you how to like move and read hints and fire your weapon at stuff. You do start with the solar gun, which was used in the first game, except it really sucks in this game and is never ever going to be used. I'm going to just start by dodging a few spiders here, just damage boost with the second one, and try and take the best line that I can along this narrow wall. That's not too bad. Coming into the second screen here, going to run into a character. We've got this mysterious vampire who's going to immediately charge Django and steal the solar gun off him. And our guardian sun avatar here, Otenko the Sunflower, is like, well, that's fine, because the solar gun can only be used by people of the solar child lineage. Vampires can't use it. And then the vampire uses it and just lays you out and then runs off. So we've lost the only weapon that we have to deal with the hordes of the undead. Now we only have bare hands to deal with undead creatures that are immortal and can only be destroyed by sunlight. So that's not a great start, but we'll go along and see what we can do. Yeah, I'll try and read the Japanese for you. I will definitely try. I forgot to mention as well, like, I do have the chat up. This is a 100% chat interaction run. I fully welcome any questions that people have about the game. Fully down to answer anything or talk about whatever you have questions about. Just don't say any mean things about me, because I will see it and start, like, yeah. I can read the few Japanese characters that I need to actually do the run. That's about it. There's like 5 Japanese characters that I know how to read, because it's actually important to be able to pass that info for the run. If I was really diligent, I would actually learn a handful more characters so that I could play around some potentially poor RNG in the second dungeon, but I've been really lazy about that. Sun? Yeah. I mean, I probably don't know the text, but I know that Tayo is Sun, yeah. Alright, so we pick up the Gladius, the sword here. Otenko's like, I guess that's better than nothing. Now I'm going to do a really weird thing here with this skeleton. So, yeah, this is, like, technically a stealth game. You're supposed to not get seen by enemies, so we just pass right in front of the skeleton and it doesn't see Django. And we hit it from behind, from 2 angles, even though I clearly hit it from the front. There's some pretty wacky mechanics with damage calculation in this game, and you do want to generally hit enemies from behind where possible. The game doesn't really care about where your position actually is relative to the enemy, though. All it really checks for is if you're facing the correct direction to get a back hit, and the hitboxes on some of your weapons are very generous. So we hit the zombie 3 times for 0 damage, and then we get the Sunflower Girl, Zazie, here, who's like, look, dude, like, this isn't gonna work, you can't go around with that weapon, so I'm gonna hook you up. And we get this helpful little glove here, the Soul Device, which I believe is actually a Latin phrase for in place of the sun or something. So that's actually a pretty nice play on words in a completely different language. But this will allow Django to use elemental enchantments on his attacks. And Zazie teaches in element sol, so we can finally imbue our weapons with the power of the sun. And we're going to go to destroying this thing. But first I need to do some menuing. Setting the text speed to fast and taking off my body armor. So, as people may have seen more frequently in some more modern titles, this is a game where you have stats and your weight is considered a stat. So by taking off the body armor that I start with, I'm able to move slightly faster. Like my movement speed right now is a little faster than when I started the game, and it will go up again when I kill 3 more enemies to reach level 3 and have enough stat points to allocate into some agility. Your 4 stats in this game are Vitality, which increases maximum life, Spirit, which increases maximum energy, basically your mana or MP, Strength, which increases your physical damage, and Agility, which increases your movement speed and defense. The agility stat is then offset against your weight stat, so your speed is basically a product of agility minus weight. And there's a few breakpoints. Like if you increase agility by X, that doesn't mean that your movement speed goes up by X. There's instead 8 movement speed brackets in this game that are defined by different like ranges of agility. And so by reaching agility to specific breakpoints, I will suddenly go up in movement speed. So when I get my next level up, I'm going to allocate enough stat points to go to 17, which is going to increase my movement speed again, and put my remaining stat point into strength to just boost attack power. We get some more exposition about going to the cathedral to, again, investigate undead activity, and we get element flame to enchant our attacks. And I finally turned on the sun for the first time, like 5 minutes into the game, and turned the sun on, and now I'm turning it off, kinda, sorta. It's still on, but I need to have it disabled when I go into the next screen after this one, because there's going to be an enemy on the outdoor screen, and undead die in contact to direct sunlight, but if they die to environmental damage, you do not get the experience for the kills. So I strictly need this experience, as well as the experience from the next 2 enemies on this screen.
And so one thing Dracodan's doing is he's actually constantly having the sunlight on when he doesn't want it to kill enemies, and what it's actually doing is generating him energy just periodically.
Yeah. So you can see the sun meter at the bottom of the screen. So the more sun you have exposure to, the higher this meter is. This is the central mechanic of the game. This is the UV flashlight and the photodiode sensor in the cartridge in action. This is what you can get if you actually go outdoors and use real sunlight. However, if you actually use organic sunlight to play the game, you will find that you have great difficulty maxing out the solar sensor like this. I mean, I live in England where it's never sunny anyway, so even as a kid, I actually used artificial means to spoof the sensor, because imagine getting sunlight in your own country. But even on like a pretty clear sunny day, you will typically like be able to get like half the bar, I guess, like 5 bars of sunlight. And as a result, none of the mechanics in this game are remotely tuned for having access to max sunlight. Like being able to consistently max out the meter like this completely breaks some of the later mechanics in the game, because it's just not expected that the player is able to have this much exposure. There's actually an in-game safety mechanic that was, I'm pretty sure, designed to protect kids from getting heat stroke. There is something called overheat in this game, where if you let the heat counter build up too much, you will trigger what's called an overheat, where it completely disables the solar sensor, and you need to go into shade for a certain amount of time to get it to function again. And I'm pretty sure that was literally put in so that kids wouldn't just stay out in the sun for like 5 hours, blazing sun, and actually get heat stroke, which is actually pretty cool. So we've been in the cathedral a little here, done a little bit of puzzle solving. We can't get in the front entrance of the cathedral, so we just solved a little puzzle in the graveyard there to open this basement door. Now we need to go through a few rooms. I'm going to kill every ghoul that I come across here, while again aiming for back hits on all of these. A lot of these are pretty trivial, but some of them are actually pretty tight, so yeah, the kills in this room are very tight. And
one
this
thing
one's coming down.
Brekodan's making look really easy right now is killing these enemies, but at some point, for most people, you'll find that this game is kind of like the Dark Souls of like the Zelda clones, or however you want to call them, like the Link to the Past type games.
I deliberately avoided using the phrase the Dark Souls of earlier, but thanks.
I'm sorry. It's really hard for casual players. In fact, even in the speedrun, there's times where like you are one hit from being killed. Like it's a very, very difficult game.
Yeah, by the time I go into the second dungeon, like 30 minutes into the run, there are enemies which will 2-hit me from full HP, because I'm wearing no body armor for the entirety of the game, and I have no investment in the vitality stat, so yeah. By endgame, you are pretty lucky if you can survive getting hit by something. Thankfully, there is a lot more risk mitigation than you may expect. We'll get to see how that plays out a little later on. Just going to finish doing these flame torch puzzles. Need to, turn on these torches, which most of them are on time limits. So like in a speedrun, it doesn't really factor in. You just do them and go. But in a casual perspective, you need to go through those rooms pretty quickly in order to actually be able to go from room to room. Putting my remaining stat points into strength, and we're finally going to get into the cathedral and start seeing what's going on. So as... corners then. Corners are hard. Movement's hard. So as Django gets into the cathedral here, we're going to go into the main room, and we're going to see that the cat from outside, called Nero, is trying to lead us to the basement, which is where the Immortal resides. So each of the main dungeons in this game has an Immortal sealed inside, like a very strong vampire, that is attuned to a specific element. And the one in this dungeon, the cathedral, is White Dinair, the sky-ruling Immortal. But the staircase disappears, and we get a floor mural that disappears. I'm now going to focus on what is actually an extremely precise kill for this trap here.
Also, at some point, I found a developer interview with Kojima where he talks about how he came to the idea of using a solar sensor for the first Boktai game. And whenever there's time for that to be shared, I would love to read that out.
Absolutely, yeah. Sure, we'll have time a little later. Going to pick up the first colored crystal here. So we had the floor mural before, which is like 4 distinct colors depicting like the world tree, Yggdrasil, and some stags at the bottom of it. We need to find 4 colored crystals throughout the dungeon to reactivate that floor mural. This is the main like puzzle of the dungeon. So I've already got 1 from finishing that trap, and need to now go through the entire rest of the dungeon to be able to find the others. In a few rooms' time, I'm actually going to be coming up on a major RNG manipulation, which is going to use a save and reset sequence, which the manipulation is actually really easy to get wrong, and it costs like a minute each time you mess it up, so I am really hoping that I'm not going to mess it up. I typically don't, but it's one of those ones where like sometimes it just seems to decide to fail on its own, but we'll see. Also going to finally charge some sunlight. So anytime you are in a skylight in the middle of a dungeon like this, you can charge sunlight, because it's like you're outdoors. You have access to... Oh, I didn't. I'm gonna not forget to put my stat points in. It was a little silly. It's fine. Not critical, but getting a little ahead of myself. Yeah, anytime you're in a skylight, you can freely recharge energy as though you're outdoors. Checking a couple of skylights there for a possible drop, but didn't get it. So now I'm doing a soft reset, save and reset sequence to do an RNG manipulation. The RNG value is going to be consistent from when I get back in game, but I need to execute the next trap completely perfectly in order to get a specific drop from the zombie that's in this trap. So enemies in this game have a common drop table and a rare drop table, where a common drop is a 10.8% chance and a rare drop is a 1.2% chance. I'm trying to get the rare drop off this zombie, which is a weapon upgrade. So I'm going to hard focus on executing this trap here. I must get everything completely right. I didn't change my weapon type. Never mind.
Oh no!
That's fine. Just do another soft reset. It's fine.
This type of tech did not exist back in the day, as a heads up. This is new tech.
This is relatively new. When I say relatively new, I mean it was like this year sort of thing, because The previous world record was held by a runner called Coalescence, who had the record for like 8 years. It was completely uncontested. Koa is a very good runner, but with a lot of routing improvements, we've managed to chop about 15 minutes off this run.
Yeah, I've wanted you to have, I've wanted you on this show for quite a while for this game, because it has literally been your passion project for the greater part of a year.
Okay, there we go. Now hit it twice from behind, and there's a drop. Yeah, so if I just remember to actually do my weapon menuing, that would have been first try, no problem. So successfully got the short sword, so that's normally, like, organically, that's a 1.2% drop chance, and that specific zombie is the only enemy in the dungeon that can drop that. So that's the only opportunity I have to get that weapon before the boss at the end of this dungeon. Damage boost through this ghoul and hit it from the back. Now with my strength where it is now, I'm killing these things in 2 hits instead of 3, which is pretty nice. Gonna use my new spear weapon to hit this lever, and we now have all 3 of the main weapon types of the run. You've got swords, hammers, and spears. Swords are the primary combat weapon type of the run that I'm actually going to use to, kill stuff. And spears and hammers tend to just have their situational uses for puzzle solving more than anything else. Such as breaking blocks with the hammer like that, or hitting far away objects with the spear that you otherwise can't reach. So I'm going to re-enable the sunlight here, and as I'm going through this next room, I have to check 18 different spots in my peripheral vision to see a little glimpse, see if you can play along at home. Oh, well, okay, that kind of spoiled it. It's just right there. Yeah, I see it, oh my god, I'm so good, yeah. I can't believe I saw that. So yeah, that can be in any of the, like, 18 skylights throughout the room, and as you see, like, they're at the very border of the screen as you're going through, and you don't have much time to check them individually, so that's, like, really easy to miss. You do have another opportunity, another visit through the room to see it, but you really want to just maximize your odds of finding that, because the next time I go through the room is the last time I will visit that room, and I need to have the item there before I leave the room for the next time. Like, it is required to progress through the dungeon.
By the way, breaking those statues, as a kid, I had no idea that was, like, the direction it wanted me to go.
Yes, I definitely got stuck here as a kid. I at least enjoyed just running around doing combat. I think I was a pretty high level. In fact, no, alright, so I know I was a pretty high level by the time I finished this dungeon, because I had enabled Crimson enemy spawns before I finished this dungeon, which requires you to kill, like, 1,000 ghouls.
Yeah, the game was basically designed as a giant puzzle game, so almost every aspect of it has a puzzle. Like, that one is one of probably the more confusing ones at the start of the game.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's super well designed, but it is what it is. Okay, so we're gonna go through the rest of the dungeon now. I need to get through this library and talk to a specific set of bookcases in... Well, I don't need to do it in a specific order, but there is a single best order to do it in. Gonna make sure I don't get hit by the poison spit from that green spider. The poison hits really hard, and it leaves a lingering damage over time effect on Django, which actually does a lot more damage than you'd think. And if I got hit at it at this health level, I think I would be fine to go without a health refill, but it wouldn't be too far off being a bad situation. You also have a lot of block solving puzzles. Like, if you just like puzzle solving in general, this is definitely the game for you, and you have just some straightforward, like, block pushing puzzles like this. Light both of the lamps and be able to get across to the other side. And these do definitely increase in complexity as the game goes on. Thankfully, none of the, like, block puzzles in this game are random. They do all have... Oh my god, first pixel and couldn't pick up the chest, nice. They do all have, like, scripted solutions, but, as a casual experience, they can be surprisingly difficult. Like, one of the optional dungeons in this game is inherently a puzzle dungeon, and, like, if I go to that dungeon now, like, I can't figure out some of the solutions in that dungeon. Like, some of them are really difficult. I'm just going to push a few blocks here. I need to push this almost all the way to the end so I can get around the other side of it and push it back, because you can only push blocks. There's no pulling blocks in this game. You can only push them away from where Django is. So I can finally get to this lamp and get the last crystal that I need. That was a pretty alright turnaround if I'm on the chest location as it appears. That's not too bad. And and switch to, yep, Sword and Sol for when I come out of this room. And just backtracking now to the original room. And as I go through the main room again, I'm going to kill 2 more ghouls for experience, and that will put me up to level 6 before I get into the boss fight. So I just need to make sure this one faces the correct direction. There we go. And I kill this next one as I pass by, and ding, 7. Nice. Oh, whoops. What am I doing? Okay, there we go. That's the correct configuration. Yeah, there's a lot of like micro menuing that you do in this run. There's a lot of switching to the next weapon that you need and the next element that you need, and it's a lot of memorizing like how many sets of L and R inputs you need to use at all times. In the second half of the run, there's actually some really rapid fire menuing for weapon and enchant management, which, I mean, I think it's pretty technical. I think it's pretty cool. Okay, so finally putting in the crystals, which is going to reveal the staircase. I'm going to move on to the first boss when we're able to.
What a beautiful mural.
Mm-hmm. Hey, it's the final boss at the bottom of the mural. I'm not going to spoil that any further, though. Split. Hey, I'm like less than a minute behind. That's not bad for like actually messing up the most critical RNG minute of the run so far. Okay,
so this boss actually has some pretty tight placement where you can actually kind of speed the fight through compared to how it's normally supposed to be done. This fight should take.
You can 100% commentate here if you want, because I'm going to be fully focusing on this. This is one of the most difficult strats to execute in the entire run.
Yeah, this is pretty rough. Dracodan also specifically sets his stats up here in such a way where it allows him to kind of do a quick kill. But what you see in the middle of the room is you can see that kind of like set of that pedestal with the candles on it. The boss itself actually will never be really hittable unless those candles are hit. Dracodan's basically always positioning himself so he can one-hit all the candles at the same time to get the boss to land. And if he does it correctly, he can basically just chain it nonstop, have the boss go up, go back down instantly. If he misses one, then you start getting the boss to do mechanics, etc., and it can kind of drag out the fight. The quick kill is not missing any of those candles. Yeah, and he did wonderful.
Yeah, I missed one hit, and it may not be immediately obvious, but if you look at what my energy is right now, the real bottleneck for executing that strat is energy management. You want to be using a combination of flame hits and soul hits for hitting the candle and dealing damage, and if you miss more than like a single hit, you just don't have enough energy to do the strat as scripted, and you need to start making further adjustments. And if you miss the candles like too many times, you find yourself just not really having the energy to carry on, and the fight can spiral out of control pretty rapidly. Like, if she's allowed to fly off, she starts dropping larvae. Like, there's a lot of ads that come into the fight which harass you and cause tons of lag, and just, it's awful. If you let that fight get out of control, it gets really out of control.
If they hit you, you get a little bit of knockback, so even if you place yourself properly, you get knocked back a bit, and now your shot misses the like one of the candles.
Yeah, and like going for the hits that actually light all the candles at once is a lot more precise than it looks. Like, the pixel window for lining up and being able to light them all in the same thrust is extremely unforgiving. Like, when I'm going back and forth there for dealing damage in between doing the candle thrusts, I'm specifically only moving along a single axis, like moving either down left or up right, and I'm letting my weapon animations give me buffer time to do the direction changes. Because if you just like try and gauge doing the direction changes yourself, you are almost certain to lose the alignment that you need to execute that.
The devs did notice that you kind of need energy to do that fight, so they did put in kind of a fail-safe if you run out. So you can use the hammer to hit some levers, but it greatly slows down the kill time on that fight.
Yes. Like, that is, if I'm doing PB attempts, that's like 100% if I make a bad enough mistake, I just reset in that fight. It's like, there's no way I'm going with, like, losing like 10 seconds in that fight when it's just, well, alright, just do it right. Just skill issue. purely skill issue myself. It's like, oh, I was 1 pixel off for this hit. Oh well, time to reset.
One thing Dracodan did as well, if you look in the top left, you can see the banana counting down. It makes him a lot stronger. Normally when you're basically dragging this coffin, it's so slow. But eating the banana makes it speed your speed up so much.
You will get a brief second to see here what the default dragging speed is, because I'm going to drop the coffin off at the pile driver here. Well, Otenko's going to summon the pile driver. This is how we actually purify the undead, because they are immortal. They can't be killed by weapons. But this is the normal coffin drag speed. So, yeah, you don't want to drag things all the way back to town like that. And you do need to drag these all the way back to town. This is like one nice little Kojima-isms of the game, I guess. You defeat the big bosses, and then all you can do is seal them in the coffin and physically drag them all the way back to town, where you can actually purify them using this huge sun mirror called the pile driver. So I mentioned that none of the mechanics in this game are tuned for maxed sun exposure. The purifications are one of the biggest examples of that. You can see how quickly the boss HP drains here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that's very fast.
I'm not familiar. Why was your camera kind of focused on the bottom of the screen?
So that's a little thing that I came across while working on the tasks of this game. So that's something I'm going to be showing a little bit of after this run, if time allows. But TLDR, when I reached the purification in the tasks, I assumed like, oh, this is going to be nothing. Like, this is scripted time. Like, you can't speed this up, whatever. But then I noticed that certain actions cause the game to lag while the purification is going on. And one of the ways that you can mitigate that lag is through camera management by scrolling objects off screen. And so you can aim to do that in RTA. I mean, I don't know if it works in RTA because I can't count the lag frames, but it works in the task, so I assume it saves some frames in RTA. The actual camera management that's used in the task for that fight looks ridiculous as well. It's like, I love how it ended up, but I hate that I had to do it as well. Like,
you'll be showing some of that off after this run, right?
Yep, I will. I will for sure.
Yeah, I had not mentioned it in the intro, but for the folks at home, Draco has also developed a task that you can find available on task videos and on their YouTube. But we're going to be showing and discussing various parts of that task tonight. So if you want to hear some of the behind-the-curtain stuff that went into making this task and finding strats for it, you do want to stick around after this run. We'll have about an hour or so to go over a bunch of things. Draco is going to give us the highlight reel, if you will.
Okay, so I'm going to be coming into the second dungeon here, and this is where I said, like, oh, I've got a bat flying at me as well. Okay, we're good. Starting from this point onwards, certain enemies will kill me in 2 hits from full. So, with my health where it is now, going into the next trap, I will die instantly if I take any damage. Out of a pure abundance of caution, I am going to take a health refill before going into the trap, and taking health refills in this game is far simpler than you might assume, because I can just try and summon sunlight when there's no sun out, and I get a health refill. So, what exactly is that about?
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just, you can go ahead, I'm going to focus on this.
Okay, you're about to see an enemy that is deceptively dangerous. Like, if you get hit by one of these at the health he's at, he basically dies.
Yeah, they deal over 50 damage.
Yeah, these slimes as well are super dangerous.
Are you kidding? Oh my...
Oh, is it the purple slimes there?
There we go, I got a good one there. So, the first drop I got off those yellow slimes is the rare drop, the magic potion, which is just a really small energy refill. I don't want that one. I want the common drop, the power nut, which I did get off the last slime, thankfully. But it's just like, oh my god, it's like, you see a drop off those enemies, you're just like, yes, it's a power nut, we're in, I'm gonna save a few seconds. And then it's the rare drop, which you don't want. It's like, oh my god, I hate this game.
Yeah, because of that code Dracodan put in at the beginning of the game, he's basically got 2 infinite things. He has infinite life and infinite energy, as long as he has somewhere he can do a taio, basically.
Yeah, so the access to the infinite life is specifically tied to the system time that I was using. I mentioned how you want to be playing on certain dates. So the deal with that is I am only playing on the date of a real-life full moon. As in, if you want to learn this game properly, you kind of need access to your real-life lunar calendar so that you can be playing on dates of a full moon and be playing at nighttime. And when you do that, if you try to charge sunlight when the sun isn't out, and it's nighttime in game, you will instead summon these moon bugs, which you can use to restore health, and you can summon these infinitely. So for all intents and purposes, if I'm like willing to waste little bits of time to charge health, you have infinite health refills in this run. And I would go as far as to say this run would not be reasonably possible if you didn't have those health refills.
We were not exaggerating when we said this was not Dark Souls. Sorry, not the knot of Dark Souls. Well, I'll stop saying Dark Souls, sorry.
You can if you want, it's fine. It's a phrase that I will abstain from, but I understand why the phrase is popular vernacular. That's the diplomatic way that I'll say.
Okay, how about this, okay? This isn't a Dark Souls clone because this came out before, so Dark Souls is a Boktai clone.
Yeah, so like Dark Souls is the Boktai of whatever, I don't know. This trap is awful, by the way. A lot of runs die here, and this run might be dead here. I mean, I say dead, I'm not going to reset, but it's not going to be good.
Yeah, this game has a lot of fliver.
This is already the worst. 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 What do I do here? What do I do here? All three of them are. Yeah, one of them is dead. Two of them are dead.
Oh no!
This couldn't have gone worse. All right. I'm gonna lose like another minute as a result of this probably, and I'm just not gonna care. Like, so. The idea of that trap is that you use wall knocks to force the clay golems to knock into each other. And normally, that's a really good thing because they stun each other and end up clustered together and you can just cleave them down, no problem. But if they just split far apart like they did there, or just not cooperate with their pathing, then you can end up not getting the kills, which is really bad because EXP is very strictly rooted here. Also, this is Sabata, Django's edgy brother. You can call him Sasuke if you want, I guess. Kind of the same deal.
He does kind of look like a purple-haired Sasuke.
Yeah. So basically, I'm 80 EXP down right now, and that is actually a pretty big deal for this point. How am I going to deal with this? This is also going to change my menuing here, because there's no point in me putting in my stat points here, so I'm instead just going to use a power nut. Yeah, so basically, I'm one level below where I need to be right now. I say need to be, it is fixable, but it's going to force me to lose a bit of time later on. I need 2 kills for 40, so I'm going to have to take 2 extra mummies, yeah. Also, we've got Element Cloud now, which you can use to push floating blocks, and Frost, which you can use to freeze them onto the floor. So we have access to quite a wide elemental tool right now, like Sol, Flame, Cloud, and Frost. Cloud can also be used to break stone blocks, which we previously had access to that room, but weren't able to actually get past that block on the corner until we can just smash it. Take a little... Okay, it's optimal to try a small solar charge there while you're waiting for those enemies to die, so that you can see if you actually get a good drop off them before moving on, but unfortunately, no.
And as you could see there, because Dracodan had the sunlight on, that zombie, that purple one, just instant dies.
Yeah. That's the whole environmental damage outdoors thing, which that screen, I don't particularly care about it happening. That zombie's just not considered part of the EXP route, but there are certain situations where you absolutely need those to be active. You need to be able to get the EXP yourself. So, here's a nice little puzzle. Put all of the color blocks on the correct floor panels. We had the 2 color puzzle in the previous room, and now got the 4 color puzzle. So this is the first puzzle, I would say, that is actually a... Wow, let me actually stop and figure out how to solve this. All the puzzles to this point are pretty trivial. The 2 color puzzle is pretty easy, but that one is casually, legitimately, that's a very difficult puzzle. Okay, so I need this enemy as well. I'm gonna just take another health refill for complete caution. Yeah, so I still need 1 extra mummy for experience. Also need to kill that clay golem for experience. I'm going to light this next mummy on fire so that it can solve a puzzle for me.
And this is kind of where I was saying that Kojima really put a lot of work into kind of the neat little tricks and nuance with the game. When the when the mummies are lit on fire, they actually light on fire and start running around in panic. When the zombies are hit by sunlight, they die to sunlight. etc., etc. Like, so the devs put a ton of cool little neat things like that in the game.
Okay, I've made up my EXP difference at the cost of some time, and I do need to visit this solar station to refill energy there. That's only a little bit of energy, but I do need to enter this mini-boss fight at full energy. And the strat I'm going to go for here is actually pretty precise, so I am going to focus on this. Okay, that's a perfectly fine fight. Going to use one solar nut to refill most of my energy here and get these chests as they appear. So we just got dynamite. Django just got blown up. Dynamite is going to be used a couple of times throughout the run for puzzle solving, but for the most part, it's going to sit pretty unused. I've also been getting split, but that's fine. Also got a random card from one of those chests there, which I don't know which card it is yet. It's a tarot card. It can be any of the actual tarot cards. There is one in particular that you want to see in this run. The others you just don't really care about, and unfortunately the one that I want to see is a 3.9% chance, so I've only gotten it in runs twice ever, and the first time I got it, I didn't survive long enough to actually be able to capitalize on it, and I was mortified, but oh well. Now we come into the desert. So when I originally entered this dungeon, it set a seed for this puzzle here. So I need to find 3 stone tablets that are in this desert grid. They're in fixed spots on any of these 8 screens surrounding the center. So I've just found one, and I'm going in a counterclockwise direction, which is going through the entire sequence. This is the fastest way to do it, but not getting so good luck so far. Ooh, yeah, this is going to be pretty bad, unfortunately. And this happens more often than not, it feels. I'm not convinced that the weighting is equal for all these screens, because I swear I need to go all the way around more often than not. To the point where I'm almost thinking should I just go around clockwise? Really? Is it really better to do counterclockwise? I'm not so sure. So now that we've got all 3 stone tablets, we can reveal the path to the next part of the dungeon. And I do have full energy before going indoors. That is required here. And I'm going to grab one hidden chest in the corner here. There are a lot of chests like this in the game where you either just need to know that they're there, or you need to come back when you have some extra powers later on, which allow you to use echolocation. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So light those torches in a specific order to get this staircase to appear. Gonna switch to Cloud before going into the next room so I can own this golem. Very satisfying to be able to destroy those things easily after they mess you up in the trap earlier, but well. Also killing those 2 mummies before I leave the room for more experience, and do a nice little block pushing puzzle here. I'm actually needing to do a quadrant of puzzles here. There's 4 puzzles in a grid that I need to do. And as you see here, my energy right here is such that I don't have enough energy to use any additional hits with Cloud or Frost. So like I mentioned, you need to enter this part of the dungeon at full energy if you want to do it as fast as possible. You can't do it without a refill unless you enter from completely full. I'm going to use my speed nut here so I can get 30 seconds of movement speed at the game's highest speed category, which we unfortunately never reach, but it's also, by the midpoint of the run, kind of obsolete to care about your speed category. You'll see later on. The game gets really, really fast in the second half, is all I'll say. And this is a nice little puzzle. Change all the floor panels into the same color. It's actually important to understand the logic behind how that puzzle works, because it's really easy to make a movement mistake in that puzzle, and then it's well, all right, now I actually need to know how to do the solution so that you can fix the mistakes that you make.
Really? I feel like nobody did that puzzle ever properly in casual playthrough. It feels like everybody just kind of did it randomly and it works.
Well, I mean, if you're in if you're speedrunning like this, if you make a mistake and it's oh man, every second counts now, it's really important to know the logic of that puzzle. Yeah,
fair.
Alright, there we go. So, getting into the boss with 2 seconds left on the speed nut. So, we found him! We found the guy who stole the solar gun, so we're gonna get it back. Except the big bad of the story appears and kidnaps Otenko. and now we're gonna get owned again. But then Sasuke appears, saves us. So this is a team effort. So the two brothers need to team up to deal with this vampire, and this is a largely scripted fight, but I do need to deal damage in very specific times, in specific increments, in order to get a 2-cycle kill in this fight. It's very easy to miss getting a 2-cycle, and it costs over a minute if you miss this. So get 2 of these, stand at the entrance here to bait him into the center. Get some damage in while weakened. There we go.
Dracodan has to protect the Sasuke here.
Yeah, I'm just going to call him Sasuke.
Yeah, he has to protect Sasuke here, because if Sasuke takes too much damage, then the charging that he's doing in the middle will stop, and then it will be a huge time loss.
Yep. So at all times, I'm misdirecting this vampire's attacks towards me and protecting Sasuke in the center.
I just appreciate the fact that Sabata just doesn't get a name anymore.
Wait,
so there we go.
That's
2-cycle
Sasuke. Are you Naruto?
However, best part of the run right here. This is the best part of any Boktai 2 run. Glomp.
What does that mean? I've heard it like the past week. What is it?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
No? Okay.
So as far as the actual lore surrounding that, the guy's hat gets knocked off. Glenn, you're spoiling it, dude. You're spoiling it for everyone. Guy's hat gets knocked off, and they get a good look at that guy's face for the first time, and they realize, oh no, that's our father. And then Django can't bring himself to deliver the final blow, and then just gets glomped instead. So now Django is turning into a vampire, like been properly bitten by a vampire, and like it's happening and all that. So now Sasuke needs to return the coffin to town, and we're going to need to purify Django in the pile driver. How many
crossovers is this? We have Sasuke from Naruto. We have Darth Vader from Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
My God.
There's Mega Man Battle Network crossovers in this too. This
Yes.
the Mega Man and Boktai collaboration or cameos started with Boktai 2.
Yeah.
I don't know at what point in the Battle Network series we were in when this came out and those crossovers started, but I do remember Lan has like a Django poster, and there's like Battle Network or there's battle chips based on the Boktai series in Battle Network 6.
So the Boktai in Battle Network stuff started on 4, so I'm salty that it was introduced in the worst Battle Network game, and I'm salty that most people know about Boktai through Battle Network. It's awful, dude. Like, I hate it.
It's how I knew about Boktai, I'm not gonna lie.
Alright, I'm just gonna finish dragging the coffin back. This room lags like hell, by the way. The game runs at like 50% speed while you're in that room and there's too many sprites on screen. And it's like the easiest screen to make a mistake. Oh, and of course a bat's gonna chase me. That's random, by the way. That's random, by the way, because the bats can be anywhere on the wall. And now my buffs run out and I'm slow. Like, oh my... Alright, don't... Alright.
Bats in video games are the literal worst.
Yeah, like, that thing can spawn anywhere along that wall, so of course it spawned close enough to actually aggro, and of course it actually was aggressive enough once it aggroed to hit me, and then keep hitting me, like, what even, dude? What even? I need to turn the light on. Because it needs to purify. So turn on 2 of these generators with the Gun del Hell. Yes, Sabata's gun is the Gun del Hell, where Django's is the Gun del Sol, fires darkness orbs. And it can thankfully turn on the generators in a single hit like this. Gonna manipulate where Django is gonna go when he breaks out the coffin and knock him back in. Now he's gonna go for one of the generators to try and knock it offline, which I just need to react to. There we go. Get back in, and that's gonna be the end of purification. This one also goes by pretty quickly. They do scale up in quote-unquote difficulty, as in the immortals just have more health the further along in the game. So the purifications take longer. They do actually scale up in difficulty as well, as in, like, in the final purification, you die in one hit. Like, they fight back harder and harder, and in the last purification, you die if you get hit by anything. So it's like, well, that's tough. So we did purify Django, but only managed to stop the transformation halfway. So Django is like part vampire now, and this form is referred to as Black Django. So in his Solar Boy form, you have Red Django, and now in vampire form, you have Black Django. All of your solar powers get sealed, and instead you gain access to a few vampire powers, which some of them are good. One of them is complete do not want and not ever going to use, so I'm never even going to put it on the toolbar. I'm going to unequip some of my powers here and overwrite some others with some menuing.
To be fair, if you didn't have infinite life, it might be okay.
Maybe, but it still is temperamental in terms of if you don't hit enemies the exact correct direction, you just get damaged from trying to attack them.
Yeah.
It's awful.
It basically, it tries to make you like Wolverine, kind of.
Yeah. So, we're going to the coffin shop here before doing anything else. Django does get a little sleepy. Sometimes can go sleep in a coffin, so we're going to get a slightly better coffin. You don't actually use the sleeping magic that much, but I do need a different coffin for later. I'm also going to start some counting. This is one of the only times in the run I'm going to do an actual honest-to-goodness EXP grind. So I'm going to kill these infinitely spawning dark roots by reloading the screen. In the chat, you may take a guess for how long I'm going to stay here for and how many kills I'm going to get. I'm on 4, and I am going to be counting these out so that I don't miscount. So that's 6. If you already know the answer, you're not allowed to say the answer, by the way. 8.
I'm gonna guess 26.
26. All right.
I'm not allowed to say the answer.
10. Yes, this is 100% required for the route. 12.
I know this looks low,
14.
but like the experience you gain from these tentacles is insane. It's so much.
16. 18. Level up. Ding. Nice. 20. 22. Even number is correct, but I'm not allowing that guess. 24. Yeah, you can get out there, that. 26.
I feel like these were not designed to be utilized this way.
No, definitely not. 28.
I'm definitely out.
And 30.
Oh.
I think the closest we had was Saturn 2K with 32.
No, someone said 30.
Oh,
Mega Miners.
Oh, you're right. Right above. Oh,
Someone
I'm
did
sorry,
in fact
Saturn.
say 30.
Congratulations, you are winner, etc. Alright, now we get to go into the next dungeon. Dark City.
Minecraft.
So, the reason that is completely required is because weapons in this game are level locked. I am going to get one more weapon upgrade that's going to carry me for the entire rest of the game, and you cannot equip it at this point without some level grinding, and it saves a gross amount of time to have this weapon. I also forgot to put my stat points in, that's fine. It's just one extra hit for this enemy. Only boosting strength now.
It's why we spend so much time getting this specific weapon in particular, for the later crafting.
Yep. So another thing to note, you kind of saw while I was recharging energy there, but since Black Django is part vampire, you do now get damaged by exposure to the sunlight. So although you need to use the sun to recharge energy, it costs life to do so now. So I'm trying to be as efficient as possible with my energy regaining, and I'm trying to hybridize my recharges so that I'm summoning moon bugs and then charging energy so that I can offset the life loss and keep my life at pretty high levels.
I did notice shortly after you gained control of Black Django, when you charged your energy, I was like, oh, that costs life now.
Yeah. And the damage scales up with the sun strength, like all the other solar-related mechanics in the game. You recharge energy a lot faster, but you also get burnt up by the sunlight a lot faster. So now Django is receiving unsolicited whispers from the main antagonist, telling him about how cool his vampire powers are and how to use them and how he should just embrace the power of darkness. I don't know why he doesn't just block him, but, These enemies are exceptionally dangerous, and I would love to use them as part of the EXP route, because the EXP they give is over twice as much as the dark routes that I was farming, which are already very efficient, but they are beyond dangerous, and I do not feel like losing most of the runs I get to this point for the sake of saving 15 seconds on the EXP grind.
Those enemies also looked like Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z. You can't convince me otherwise. At least the very short glimpse I got of them.
You'll get to see a bit more of them later, but you get to see more of them in this room. They also have a good sound. Listen to this.
Okay, they look less like Piccolo than I thought, but at a glance,
like
in passing.
Like, I would, like, obviously there's a callback to Metal Gear Solid Guard stuff with how, you know, they have the alert exclamation points, but as with the mummies there, I would prefer the guards in Metal Gear Solid if they went when they found you. That'd be good. I'm gonna kill a few here. Black Django does have a slightly different property to his attacks, where Black Django's slashes will deal knockback to enemies. They do give the enemies some iframes depending on what enemy type they are, but they also deal set knockback, which is very good for crowd control and makes enemies like those mummies, which are called gusts, very consistent. Well, consistent if there's not like more than 2 of them and if they're not getting desynced, and there's a reason that I don't really go for these in the EXP route yet. I have calculated that it's about 15 seconds faster to kill all of the packs of those that you come across, but every single one of them is a very high risk to just kill the run instantly. Like, they are very hard to crowd control, they're really erratic, and getting them to cooperate is really not trivial because those enemies are blind. You can't, like, force them to do something by, you know, like, using normal visual stuff, like being in a certain place at a certain time. They only react to sound stimuli, which I am actually going to use to my advantage in one of the rooms coming up here. This is probably the most creative strat we use in the run. So, enemies that are indoors when exposed to sunlight, they will take scaling damage based on the strength of the sun meter. At 10 sun, they will die, but at 9, these will take massive damage. So I'm going to use sound to bait these under the skylight. Grab this key. Use a buffer to deal some damage. And get 300 EXP at once. So that is...
Nice.
I don't want to go back in there. Alright. So the big danger with that is, like, physically judging the distance you need to hold the cartridge away from the light to specifically get, like, close to 9 sunlight without getting 10 sunlight is pretty hard. And if you misjudge it and do 10 sunlight, they instantly die, and you don't get any of the experience. And 300 experience is a massive deficit to make up. It's awful if you mess that up. And even if you do judge it correctly, the fact that they detonate and that the damage on them can be inconsistent means that they can end up killing each other, and you still sometimes don't get the EXP. Also coming into the hardest mini-boss of the run, which, like, I mean, Funks, you probably hate this fight as well, right?
This was, unironically, probably the hardest fight in the run, okay? Prior to what you do now. This was insane. Dracodan now has it to the point where Cheyenne just doesn't do anything.
Oh,
back in the...
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Now I actually need to play the fight, and this is the worst fight in the game to play.
Yeah, if he gets his axes back at any point, this is just such a nightmare. Oh, God. Anyways, if he... Okay. If he gets it properly and doesn't use that deck, that's the easy one. The spin one is...
I'm not talking about it. I'm not talking about it.
You did fine. You did
So the idea of that fight is that when you deal a certain amount of damage from behind, you'll knock Cheyenne back a little, and based on where he's standing on the tiles, you can, like, force him into following a really awkward path, which keeps him locked down in a consistent pattern, but I misjudged some of my timing there, and the fight got really out of control. Cheyenne, when he's actually freely acting and moving, is potentially the most dangerous enemy in the game, as Funk was saying.
Yeah, like, the axe spin attack will basically one-shot you without armor. It's insane how much damage it does.
If he uses the whirlwind attack, it's basically death without a chance for counterplay, yeah. So I'm using a warp leaf to leave the dungeon now, and I'm going to go back to town. and we're going to do the biggest RNG manip of the run. This is the most critical part of the run to get first try, and there was one other runner who like was doing any percent runs and getting pretty decent times. He's not running the category anymore because of this manip, and I don't blame him. So I'm going to buy a couple of weapons from Cheyenne here and resort my inventory here. I need to equip the starting weapon and put these in the first 2 slots. Going to go into the forging house now. So the main way that you get weapon upgrades in this game is through forging. You can combine weapons to, you know, rank them up into higher weapons. So I'm going to combine these 2 swords into a longsword. I'm only going to do a few hits here because I only need to care about which weapon I get, which is more or less predetermined at this point. So after this, I'm going to do another soft reset sequence, and you're not going to hear it on the stream, but I have an external timer, Eon timer, which is normally used for Pokemon like shiny hunting, RNG manip stuff. Because from soft resetting the game, I need to hit an 8-frame window when I get back into the game and confirm the next forge. So I have an offset for timing when to do the soft reset and a very specific time that it's going to count down from. And like I say, if I soft reset at the right time and then time the forge within an 8-frame window, I will be able to get the weapon that's going to carry me throughout the rest of the run. So here we go.
Good luck.
I'm not entirely sure about that reset, but we'll see. Now I need to get through all these screens pretty quickly, including setting the date. Okay. So once I get into the forge, if I've done the timing correctly, precisely 15 hits will morph this weapon into an unexpected result. Like, the weapon that you expect to get from the forge will be displayed when you confirm the forge. But instead of this like white weapon, if I get this right, I'll get a black sword. I'm not sure about this, so we'll see.
Yeah, this game works with a similar concept to like critical crafts, where you have a chance of getting like something better than what you're originally crafting. There is, from my understanding, manip, like RNG behind it, which is what Dragos is, or sorry, Draco. I'm sorry. Oh no. I have a coworker named Dragos. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm really not sure about this. If I'd gotten all 15 great hits, which are all 3-frame windows, then I would have extended the frame window by 4 to 12 frames, but I'm gonna have to just see. I don't know about this one.
Come on.
No. Okay. Have to go again. I do need this. Like, this is not optional to do the route, like, without this weapon.
And now it's starting to be understandable why the other runner doesn't run this category anymore.
Yeah, every time you fail this costs over a minute. Like, no questions asked for sure.
Same with the one earlier in the run. It's both of these are with the intention of getting this weapon. You need to do the one before in order to get the weapon that's prerequisite to this craft.
Hey, you got this.
Okay, here we go. That feels good this time. Obviously, I'll try to play the game perfectly.
You're doing great, as the blacksmiths say.
Okay, so I got all 15 grades. That extends the end of the frame window. So like there's an extra 4 frames stapled onto the end of the window. So what that means is if I was actually early on the window, it doesn't help to get the frame extension. So if I miss this now, I will know that I was just early. But we're good. That's the katana.
Nice.
All right, cool. Sucks that I didn't get the katana first try, but I will take not sitting here resetting for it for 10 minutes because that is something that, like, can happen. That is absolutely not trivial to get. So, haven't equipped it yet because I was about to say I'm not level 17 yet. Now I'm level 17 because, again, the EXP in this route is pretty strictly rooted. That is the last enemy that I'm going to kill before the next boss, which gets me up to level 17, which is the level that I need to be to equip the katana. I'm going to wait until I actually get into the fight to equip the katana. there's a secondary manipulation that's going on during that forge as well. Like weapons can have bonuses depending on how well you craft them, where they can have like a plus X bonus to their damage, or they can have what is called an SP effect, which is unique to each weapon and gives them like a different property, effectively like lets them deal damage based on a different criteria. The katana's SP effect is that it increases damage based on your agility stat. Like for every 8 agility you have, it will give you 1 extra attack power. Since I have 25 agility, that gives 3 extra attack power, and that equates to having 6 extra strength. Like it's 2 strength for 1 attack power. So effectively, you hit as though you're 2 levels higher than you actually are, which is a really significant bump in damage. And the katana itself, just the base damage of the weapon, it punches way above its weight for the level. Like this is a level 17 weapon, but you're gonna end the game in like the mid-30s, and it has about the same power as like the weapons you would have at endgame in the mid-30s. So like effectively I have a weapon that's competitive for endgame right now, and I'm like coming up to the midpoint of the game.
Also, I'd like to say this game has some amazing music. Like this boss fight music is so good. There's another one later, Black Dane, that also has really good music as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna wait to see where stuff is spawning here before... Okay, I'm gonna equip the katana now, put in my strength points. I would have liked to take 0 damage there, but that's fine. I'm also using bat here so that I can see which of these bulbs is the real one. Using echolocation, you can see red Durathor inside the correct bulb. Or if you don't want to do that, you can wait to see which one vibrates slightly, but that is a lot more unforgiving than just using the very obvious tell from bat form. And since the katana deals with this fight so much easier, we now have the spare energy to be able to do this. Like in the previous route, we were not able to use bat form since it took so many more hits to end the fight that you just didn't have the energy to spare on using bat form. But now this is just a lot easier in general. And this fight is already almost over.
Also, to clarify, time-wise, do you have more frames being used by doing the bat form, or is it actually still faster? Because I know there's the menuing where it pauses. This didn't exist back when we played.
Yeah, I would say it's faster than not using it, because being able to see which is the correct bulb sooner, I think it saves more time than the menuing required to select bat form and then go away from bat form. Okay. Like every cycle when you're waiting for the bulbs to vibrate, you do need to wait a couple of seconds before that vibration starts, so I do think it's faster, yeah. So after getting out of that fight, I also immediately put my stat points in, raising my strength up, which seems like a bit of a counterintuitive choice, since as soon as I finish these puzzles, I'm going to open the menu again to use a warp leaf to leave the dungeon. And it would make sense to do those menuing actions together, and we did used to do that, but a Japanese runner by the name of Beige did some digging around and figured out that the coffin drag speed in this game is variable depending on the product of your strength plus agility stat. And the TLDR is if your strength plus agility is 75 or higher, you will get an increase in coffin drag speed. And by putting in my stat points there, I'm at 50 strength and 25 agility. So doing the menuing there to put in the stat points still winds up being about 2 seconds faster than not doing the menuing and dragging the coffin slower.
There's also a very specific reason we have this coffin, which you'll see very shortly.
Yeah. So stepping on the bottom of the staircase here is the flag that sets this puzzle as being solved. Then I leave the coffin behind, see you later, don't care, work it out yourself, get out of the dungeon, and I'm doing a soft reset. So now I strictly need to set the clock forward. So this is a soft reset, which isn't attached to an RNG manipulation anyway. This is a pure time save. So previously I was playing on May 5th for the purpose of the katana manip. Now I'm going to be playing on August 31st. So the main reason that we want to use the elephant coffin is it's the only coffin that can move under its own power. And if you like turn the game off and the game date advances, the coffin will walk back to town on its own. It completely skips the coffin backtracks altogether. I mean, you still need to do the time of actually doing the clock reset, but it's way, way faster than physically dragging the coffin back. Especially in this instance, since I'm Black Django for this backtrack, Black Django can't eat the solar fruits, like they just make him sick, so you don't even have the option of using a power nut to make it faster. So to start this purification, I just need to have one generator active, and then Django is going to get overwhelmed by the sunlight, and then there's a like anime style cutscene where it's, you know, power of friendship or whatever, I don't know, and then manages to get his soul powers back, and we'll be able to freely switch between the two forms of Red Django and Black Django. Most of the remainder of the game is going to be done as Red Django for one very specific reason, which will be obtained as soon as we get out of this scenario.
There's not a lot of anime style moments in this. Also, Taiyo! There's this one, and then actually at the end of the game, you'll see another anime style, you know, power of friendship, sunlight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as soon as I get control here, gonna menu. Equip Sun in that slot, and use some downtime to get my energy back. Okay, she's gonna fight back now. Blur your phones, knock her back in when she comes out. Please, get in. Now she's gonna go to a generator. That's a good one. Yep, alright. Thankfully, did not get hit by the thorns, and that will be purification over. This is the point where the purifications like start really scaling up in difficulty. Those thorns, they are like random angles that they come out on, so you do need to like react to them and anticipate them. They will kill you in 3 hits, I believe. And if you are standing in the precise center of the arena, where they all like spawn, where they all converge, you can get hit by multiple things on the same frame. So if you're in the very center, you just die instantly when they spawn. That's nice. Choosing the second option here because the game's just asking, do I want to save? No, saving costs time. Don't want to do that, thank you. So we get grow magic here because the solar tree has been replanted and it's going to be steadily growing through the game as it gets exposed to more sunlight. This is a value that the game tracks based on like how much solar exposure you've had over the game's save file, and getting this thing to fully grow is thankfully not part of the any percent run. It is part of the 100% run, which Coalescence is the only person who has done, and because growing the solar tree is part of that route is over 12 hours. So I'm really glad you don't have to do anything with the solar tree in any percent.
Yeah, and one thing Dracoden's been doing pretty much through the entire run is having sunlight even when he doesn't need it. And that's because slowly but surely, as he has sunlights on, he's gaining currency in the bank.
Yes, I'm gaining currency in the solar station specifically. Like, there's a bank balance for your money, and there's a solar station balance. You can swap between them, but they are treated inherently as different things, which is an important distinction. We now get access to the dash magic. So I mentioned how none of the mechanics in this game are tuned for having max sunlight. This is also true for the dash, which you get off Cheyenne here, and which scales in power based on sun level. So having access to 10 sunlight constantly, you can dash around at this speed for the entire rest of the game, essentially, whenever you have dash selected. This bypasses whatever weight you currently have, you just move at a fixed speed. So I'm also going to, a little later in the game when there's an opportune moment, re-equip my basic cloth armor, which will decrease my normal walking speed, but it will increase my survivability elsewhere, and for the most part, I'm just going to be using dash to move around from this point onwards. So I destroyed a dark route outside of an optional dungeon there. Seems a little bit of a strange choice, but destroying that route is the condition for changing the spawns on this outside screen. And I want these mummies to be active. I mentioned when I was Black Django, they're a real nuisance, but now that you have Red Django and you can actually use Sol, which is their elemental weakness, I can one-shot them no problem with... Oh, what am I doing? I need to dark there. Yeah, I can one-shot them easily with Sol and the power of the katana. Like, something that I didn't really highlight when using the katana in the Durathor boss fight, like, if it's not clear how much time this weapon really saves, the Durathor fight itself that I did there is almost a minute faster than the fight takes in the previous route that like Koa used before any of the RNG minutes were applied. And that saves enough time, like in the Durathor fight alone, to almost make up the time of doing the manipulation itself. And from there, having the weapon just pays dividends through the rest of the game. Like, you just save time in every combat instance from having a better weapon.
And as you saw, it's safer as well because you don't rely as much on your energy. So you can do that fight a lot more consistently.
So destroying all 4 routes on that screen is the flag condition for permanently removing them from that screen, and that is important because that's going to be like a central hub screen that I'm going to move through multiple times. We get just a very nice backtrack here through Dark City where I'm going to just do a lot of movement. You get to just enjoy what the dash movement looks like here. This is one of the reasons that I was really infatuated with the idea of running this game for like the years that I procrastinated over actually learning it back when the route was extremely difficult and extremely punishing. Like, it still is extremely difficult, but it's less punishing in other ways. But I really love the idea of just having this movement mechanic for basically the entire second half of the game. Like, optimizing the dash movement here is, as you can see, it's really not easy. Like, dash movement in this game is very technical. Okay, gonna equip a bunch of elements here over specific slots because I need all 4 primary elements to solve this puzzle here. Put Cloud on, push this once, push this iron block in the hole, push this against the wall, use spear to push this by 2, and 2 more, switch to sword, push it against the wall, 1, switch to spear. I wasted 10 energy, but that is fine. I do still have the energy to finish the puzzle with Frost. Gonna go in the menu and use my last remaining... Oh, no, I'm not, because it's expired. That's fine. I can just go outdoors and charge energy, but that is not supposed to happen. I was a little too slow. Okay, that's fine. Right, now I'm going to, put my basic elements back on. Need to have a combination of stuff here. Gonna kill these gusts as I'm passing through this room with 2 hits each. I'm gonna do a little bit of a counterintuitive movement path here. Gonna go back into this room and then back out again. By doing enough room transitions, you reload the enemies, but these enemies share spawn points with the enemies in this room, and I would rather kill them in this room than the previous room for experience. Switch to Black Django and mouse so I can go through the mouse hole. Pick up this second tarot card. So the idea of this section is we want to get into the next dungeon, the Aqueduct, but the door is sealed by 3 tarot cards. The Magician, the Hermit, and the Aerophant. And not able to get in until we get all 3 of those tarot cards. So we just got the second one from Dark City. Gonna equip Dark over Sol, Dynamite over Mouse, and use a Warp Leaf to get out of here. And dash back to Remains, the second dungeon that we did a lot earlier in the game. Gonna get rid of this Dark route. You do need to specifically use Element Dark to destroy these routes.
It makes me wonder, like, how people did this back in the day. Just, like, some of these puzzles are just in the most random spots. Like, I feel like without sites like GameFAQs, there was no way a kid was gonna figure this out.
I think there are some in-game hints, but it's absolutely not straightforward, no.
Yeah, any of those panels on the wall that kind of look like an H are a hint. I'm assuming that's what the H stands for. But a lot of them are kind of vague, and it feels like some of these tarot cards, there's no way. How?
Gonna put Sol over Dynamite here, then use another Warp Leaf to leave. And I'm going to use the mummies that are enabled on the screen outside Aqueduct now to farm a little bit of experience. I'm also going to, out of an abundance of safety, take a health refill before actually going into the Aqueduct. Need to kill 3 of these for some EXP. Okay, so now we can get in. And Sasuke warns us that our father isn't really our father. He's possessed by the big bad of the story, Black Dain. And he's gonna rush in and unseal the immortal that's sleeping in the Aqueduct. And so we got to get through a few traps, which apparently they didn't have to deal with, but the katana just absolutely cleans these up, no problem. Second trap is relatively trivial, but can go wrong surprisingly easily. Flame over Soul, put my strength points in, and do that. Okay. Gonna have some octopi here. They're functionally the same as the Dark Roots, but they only spawn in water, and they do launch rocks at you from the water, so there is like a little bit of randomness here. I can survive a hit if I do get hit, though, but that was totally fine. Please go! Alright. There is a skylight before this last trap, which is nice because it definitely requires the most combat, this last trap, and I'm actually going to do this last trap as Black Django. So, counterintuitively, the undead enemies, specifically the skeletons in this game, are not resistant to dark. Like, enemies in this game have a set elemental weakness that they take quad damage from, and if they don't have an elemental weakness, then they take a fixed plus 25% from every element. And skeletons don't have a weakness, so they do take 25% more from dark, like they do from every other element. So the crowd control offered by Black Django's slashes makes that trap infinitely easier.
Yeah, back in the day, that was a very annoying trap.
Yeah.
Just even the placement now where Dracodan puts them all is so much quicker.
Okay, so we get here, and main antagonist Black Dane finally reveals himself in Ringo's body. And we're going to have to deal here with the sea-ruling immortal, Blue Dvalin. Like, giant sea monster. She's either going to have a main head, which can appear at certain points, or more commonly tentacles, which are like 2 different tentacles around the border of the arena. If they do spawn close together, you can cleave them for double damage, which obviously is a lot faster, but is not consistent whatsoever. Like, they need to spawn together. It's totally random. There's nothing you can do to force it. So if you don't get them together, there is actually a lot of RNG time variance on this fight. Like, the time on this fight can swing very widely. So I've absolutely lost good pace runs to just not getting a good fight here. Like, oh, cool, I lost 30 seconds. Cool.
You still have the coffin for the possible swag kill here?
Yep. No, that's not a double. Lol. That maybe. That really feels like that should have been.
Slightly too far, yeah.
Okay, I need to react correctly to this. And I don't have the energy to finish her off, that's fine. She is at critical health now, though. Wow! I had temperance! I didn't die! Where... Oh, she's...
Oh, there you go.
I'm gonna take this safe.
Oh, you're gonna do... Okay.
Yeah. It's not very common that you have to actually destroy the oil bullets, but they kill Red Django really quickly. And then, yeah, so the elephant coffin can also shoot balls. I don't have the solar gun, but I do have the elephant coffin, which I can use to shoot faraway enemies. So if she's at 1 health, that 1 damage does finish her off. That was a really bad fight, by the way. Like, a really bad fight. Okay. Yeah, use my last wall to leave. Then I need to transform back to Red Django. Turn on, thank you. Now I'm going to go to the clock tower. So every single day while the game is on, you can use this clock tower to manually reset the time rather than do a soft reset sequence, which is obviously a lot faster. I'm just setting the date forward to the next full moon date so that I can keep using moonbugs, and once again, the coffin teleports back to town. Also now going to go to the item shop and do the only shop of the run. I'm going to get my inventory for the entire rest of the game. Please sell that. Also notice I've got maximum funds now, so there is an interest system in this game. The actual bank balance that you have, for every day that passes, you gain a rate of interest that can be anywhere between 1.5% to I think it's 15%. It's completely random. And if you reset the clock by like just a full month, you can get up to 10 days of consecutive compound interest. But you get the same interest rate for that entire duration, so it can swing very widely. Like if you get a like 15% interest rate 10 days in a row, you can end up with max funds like that. But if you consistently get like the minimum interest rate throughout all resets, which can happen, it's not likely, but it can happen, you can actually have not enough money to continue the route, which is very funny. Part of the reason as well that I said the route used to be a lot more unforgiving is because with having less access to money in the old route through doing less resetting, that is extremely dangerous because this game actually costs currency to continue if you die. Like, I've had a pretty bad time of some of the splits here, but I haven't at least died at any point. When you die, you do need to spend a chunk of cash to continue. And especially on the old route, the money was routed really strictly. Like, you had just enough to afford like everything that you actually needed. And it was at the point where like if you did die anywhere, you basically couldn't finish the route without farming more cash, and farming more cash effectively means doing extra clock resets. So it was just really, really punishing if you were trying to go for a good time. Now, at this point, coming into the last, like, huge dungeon of the run, Spiral Tower, this is going to be an area where I use both Sasuke and Django, and their halves play pretty differently. Sasuke's half is about, like, dashing through enemies, and I'm going to be using speed buffs on Sasuke, whereas Django can just use the sun at all times, and I want to limit sun exposure to Sasuke if at all possible. It's random whether you hit that black slime on the corner, like whether the game moves you by 1 pixel or 2 pixels on the frame that you pass it, and if you hit it twice, you die. That's nice. Like, it's not RNG, but it is random, so that's nice to have this deep into a run.
It's not RNG, but it is random.
Yeah, like, you don't have control over it, it's unpredictable, but it's not controlled by a random number generator. Okay, so gonna, after pushing that block for Sasuke, gonna fall back down to the first floor and activate the switch. Then gonna swap over to Sasuke himself by using floor panel. Use a speed nut here. Although Sasuke's armor is really good, it's also really heavy and really slows down his walking speed. So by using 2 speed nuts throughout his half of Spiral Tower, he'll go through it a lot faster. And he also has the 0 shift. Wow, use it in the wrong direction. Nice. So this is similar to the dash in that it makes you move the same speed as the dash, actually, in a given direction. But it makes you intangible for the dash duration, so you can just go through enemies like that. It's a bit more awkward to handle than the dash, but it's a very useful tool all the same. And I'm trying to be pretty selective about where I'm using it, since Sasuke does not have the same degree of control over refilling energy that Django does. If I just hold right coming out of here without dashing, I will consistently dodge that slime on the corner as long as I have an armor equipped. Gonna pick up this health later. Please go up the stairs. Gonna kill a couple of these awful things. These are cockatrices, one of the most dangerous enemies in the game, but as long as I can consistently group them up and back hit them with earth, they are worth very, very generous EXP, 200 each.
Is there a weakness actually, life?
It's earth.
Oh yeah, sorry, earth.
Yeah.
Life. Yes.
And that is the reason that for the previous purification, I was using earth, because purifications don't really care what element you're using, but earth is the next element that I actually need to use for combat against those cockatrices, so it's slightly more optimal menuing to just use earth for the purification instead of soul.
I don't recall killing those back in the old routing. Was that part of your EXP routing?
Yes, that is a relatively new addition to the route, killing the cockatrices.
Okay, that makes sense then.
So, we dealt with a mini-boss there by using Black Django. Please, solve. You really don't want to get caught by those ghosts, wraiths, or as the game calls them, lays. They are awful, awful, awful creatures which will quickly drain your energy, and they randomly scramble your controls. As in, like, your D-pad will just be assigned new values, and it's changed every time they get you. So there's no, like, instantly getting used to it. And I don't know what it is, but I just cannot figure out the correct controls. It's, like, I don't know. No matter how much I practice, I just cannot control myself properly when they catch me.
It's not even that it's just like, okay, inverts it, so up's to down, et cetera, et cetera. No, it's just, it randomizes all of them. Left can be up, down can be, up. or sorry, down. It can be like really all over the place.
Yeah, and when you start trying to like figure out where the diagonals are, it's just like my brain doesn't work anymore. I'm just gonna wait for the curse to go away. You're gonna shoot at this ghoul from over here, please. All right, there we go. Pick up this key to get outside. Now, Sasuke is taking constant damage from the sun while outdoors, but his health is a lot higher than Django's, so it doesn't really matter. And his armor is also a lot stronger, so if he does take some hits on enemies, he can actually tank quite a few hits. Like, for the most part, you really don't have to care about Sasuke's health value in this dungeon. You're gonna shoot at this switch repeatedly from here to change the floor pattern so that Django can continue through this puzzle. And get this rusted lever so that Django can progress. And then this grey lever that you can see, that's going to free Sasuke from this puzzle, which is now, like, he's effectively soft-locked in here. You can actually truly soft-lock yourself. If you reach this point where you're doing, like, Sasuke's half of the puzzle, but you don't have any energy, that is actually a soft-lock, because due to a bug, there's no way for him to gain energy outdoors. So you, like, can't really do anything there. Okay, put on Rising Sun, put in my stat points. So this is one of the only times that you use Rising Sun in the route. There's an intended puzzle here where you use these switches to like drop bombs on an enemy that's nearly off screen, but you can just detonate a sun bomb and kill it instantly instead. This outdoor screen is now one of the most difficult screens in the entire game. If that looks really close, it's because it is really close, and now I have to do a return journey.
If he gets hit by any one of these,
oh, there we go.
And he has to start it over again.
Yeah, they push you off the platform. We used to use Black Django, transforming into bat form, because the bat cannot get pushed off, since it just floats, but it's faster to just not transform into Black Django. I read a hint panel on the wall there. This is the one part where you actually need to know your Japanese characters. So if you've been studying diligently, from the speed that I just instantly scrolled the text there and have the text on screen for like a few frames, you will know that I need to push the block 4 south. And then once again here, once Sasuke gets back inside, gonna get another hint panel, which is gonna... So again, I hope you've been researching. So once we get to this hint panel, please pass the information appropriately. And we've got 3 east. Okay, cool. So 4 south and 3 east. Then you need to invert that because the information refers to each other's panels. So that is 4 east and 3 south, which is awful. Thanks, game. Transform to Black Django before I finish solving this. There we go. So yeah, that's the one part of the game where like you need to know at least the kanji for the cardinal compass directions. You need to know like north from south, and you need to know east from west. Otherwise, you are not going to get through this puzzle in a timely fashion. Oh, I didn't do the untransform early enough, really? Okay. Yeah, Black Django can get through the Sword Plus and Axe Plus fights a lot quicker than Red Django, both because the attacks are a lot faster from Black Django's weapons, and Element Dark actually does a lot of damage at this point. Or rather, while you're just playing at night, because Element Dark gets an extra 50% damage if it's nighttime in-game. Please stand on there. Okay. We had Solar Wind there. I'm using a Solar Walkway there, which is only enabled if the sun value is between 1 and 8. 1 and 8 inclusive, I should say. Please. Why do I even have Cloud? Why do I even have Cloud? I'm just going to go outside. I'm just going to go outside and get energy. I don't even care. I don't even care. I could not care less.
Yeah, and the wind here only is active when you have sunlight. Yeah. So it's a double whammy where you need the platform so you have sunlight. But
I'm just waiting for the curse to go. I said these things were awful, and I wasn't lying.
Well, you got it.
Okay, knock the switch. Now I need to kill all 4 of them as they respawn in the room for EXP. Alright, whatever. I've got full. It's fine. It's fine. Just... Those things fluster me like nothing else. Seriously. Alright, now we've got one more puzzle to do before we reach the end of Django's tower. Please. Please. Oh my god, please. All right. All right. So my energy is now going to be exactly at 100, which is nice because I need precisely 100 energy to be able to use Rising Sun in the next boss fight, which is a pretty new piece of information which I somehow was not aware of when I was working on the task, and I thought you literally needed 100% of your energy bar. So the task has a pretty obvious suboptimal like strat. That sucks, but maybe I'll rework it when the next version of BizHot comes out. The task was a lot more difficult to work on than you might assume, due to the solar sensor emulation actually not working 100% correctly in BizHawk. I'll describe it in a little more detail during the task showcase, but like some sections were incredibly difficult to work on. Because, well, alright, let me just put it this way. The whole point of working on a task is that the behavior of the emulator is entirely deterministic. The behavior of the emulator was not entirely deterministic. Not even close. I need to equip Rising Sun here, put my stat points in. Okay, we're good. So come now into the big confrontation with the main antagonist here, Black Dane, who's about to awaken the sleeping primordial being that's underneath the city. Like, the entire plot has been like the family of immortals are trying to awaken this primordial being called the Ancestor Piece that's sleeping underneath the city, which is just gonna destroy the world. Like, it's not a living being, it's not an undead being, it's just an immortal being which just wants to devour the world. You are given a choice here if you want to join Dane. Select option 2 unless you want an instant bad ending. That is an actual bad ending. Start the fight by using Rising Sun to chunk him for 1500 damage and use a couple of solar nuts to restore energy. This is going to let me deal with phase 1 of the fight in one fewer cycle. And once I get into phase 2, I'm going to do a very precise and very dangerous strat, which will allow me to get a quick kill if I get it right. But if I get it wrong, by that I mean if I get the frame and pixel data wrong, I will die instantly and have to start the fight over. I will let Funk like fill you in for the rest of the fight here. I need to full focus on this.
So at least this portion of the fight is largely similar to the original fight. It's the second phase where you start seeing the difference, and that's coming up now. So right now this looks kind of easy, but he just dodged all of those balls from being too close to the boss, but not
there we go.
to get one shot.
Yes, those balls kill you in one hit, and there is just a very, very narrow spot right next to the boss where their hitbox hasn't like fully spawned, so they don't actually connect with you, and you're able to just wail on him in his face. But yeah, if you start attacking in a very slightly wrong spot or very slightly too far away from him, you just die in one hit, no questions asked. That is a very difficult strat.
The devs seem to have originally intended that to be dodging the balls in the dark form or black Django. But as you see, standing in the perfect spot, you just avoid everything.
So what you're saying is... Oh.
I just want to call Django Dwayne now.
No, it's something I started as a kid. I always called it the Django because of the D in the front of the name.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, Funk, they intended that specific mechanic to be Ikaruga. Okay.
I think that just whooshed over my head. Sorry.
Come on.
Ikaruga?
I know what Ikaruga is.
You absorb the bullets of the same color. Please put it in. All right, no. I teleported the coffin back to town again. And now I'm going to do this final purification as Red Django. And same as in second phase of the previous fight, if I take a single hit here, I will die instantly. So I am going to full focus on this.
Yeah, technically the safe kill here is to be in the black Django form and then just put sunscreen on, but as you can see, we're not doing that.
Oh, I don't like that. I'm playing this safe. I don't care that he's knocked the generator offline. I'd rather survive. Get in, dude! Oh my god! Now there's an extra cycle. My god. Alright, whatever. That was an awful purify.
Good job.
That was an awful purify, but I'm alive. That is the most important thing here. Like, I don't even care, dude.
Did not die.
3 generators online, easy, no problem. I do it every day. What are you talking about? Now we've got like 3 minutes of cutscene, which includes Ringo sacrificing himself. So I'm going to turn the light off, literally, to just let the LED cool down a bit and to, again, limit my exposure. Like, I haven't gone into, like, you know, super detail about, like, you know, when I use the light or how much you need to, like, get by in the run, but the guiding principle that I try to rely on is if I don't need the sunlight on, I will turn it off to limit my own exposure to it, like as a real health measure. So like there's no reason for me to have the light on for 3 minutes here.
It is actual UV, and Dracodan actually has sunscreen on right now. It's obviously for, you know, anything to do with UV and health concerns. But I know a lot of our runners back in the day, including myself, kind of jerry-rigged their own kind of setups. So for me, I used like a wiring and a potentiometer, like et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't near me, but Dracodan wants a lot more control over the solar sensor. So you can see why the flashlight's right there, so he can pull it up, push it down, you know, gauge the distance, et cetera.
Yeah. There's actually a small, like in terms of pure speedrunning, I am accepting a small compromise by playing on Nintendo DS. Like, for those who don't know, the native Game Boy Advance frame rate is 59.7275. The DS running in GBA mode is 59.6555. So I lose...
Yeah, it's ever so
you lose a
slower.
fraction, a very fractional amount. Basically, across the course of this run, which is like 1 hour 45 is my PB, I lose about 8 seconds from playing on DS. But I believe that I make that up from having greater control over the sunlight.
Is that still the case with the Game Boy Player for the GameCube?
No, the Game Boy Player just operates at a static 60 frames per second, which is slightly faster than the native frame rate, but then that just compensates by occasionally it just duplicates a frame so that the logic can catch up.
Okay.
So even though the Game Boy Player operates at a slightly higher frame rate, it's not treated as like the game running above base clock rate or anything.
Okay. I know I used to play on the Game Boy Player, which is why I was...
It is the, predominant, like you've done it. Rafi, the other runner who was doing any percent this year, also runs on Game Boy Player. But I just really like the freedom of control, like you were talking about, of being able to freely control where the sensor is, how much it's exposed to at a specific time. Like you can angle the cartridge differently, you can pull it away, you can pull it completely out of the beam. You just get so much control over it, and I just really like that angle of the speedrun.
So while we've been chatting, Dracodan has now entered kind of the final dungeon of the run. This dungeon is huge. There's a lot of bosses, a lot of really, really difficult parts, which they'll make it look incredibly easy, but mark my words, they are incredibly difficult.
I don't know, I won't necessarily make it look very easy. The bosses in this dungeon can and will delete you if they feel like it.
Absolutely, yes.
Like, the first boss of this dungeon is going to be the sandworm at the end of this floor, and the sandworm can just randomly decide to move onto your position while burrowing underground and fire a rock at you at an unreactable speed that will just kill you instantly if it happens. Like, it is possible to take a quote-unquote RNG death on sandworm. And that has happened to me before, multiple times on PB pace. It's very cool when that happens.
There's technically a fast kill on the sandworm if you get a certain tarot card throughout the run, but I don't believe Dracodan got that.
No. I got the one that saved me in Dvalin, remember, when I misplayed badly enough to get hit. Okay. So, get the key here that's hidden behind this rock. Now we're looping back around to the start of the area, except now I can open a locked door here. At least I have a lot of spare energy. Like, energy is not going to be a problem in the last floor at all. So here's the sandworm. I absolutely hate this thing. Gonna first hit it in the head to knock it against the arena wall, hit it 9 times, and run away before it burrows, which can hit you out of... Oh my god, get away from me. Oh my god! Oh! And I'm dead.
Oh no!
And I'm dead.
Oh.
All right, I have enough spare energy here to just do a... I don't know why I'm not dashing that. Okay, there's no point in me using a health item because, again, I will just die in one hit if I get hit anyway, so I'll just go ahead.
And as you can see, every section of the boss takes damage, so that's where the Tarot card we mentioned earlier, if he got lucky and actually got that drop, it would have done an insane amount of damage to every section and insta-kill.
And it burrowed around for ages longer that time as well. That's not good. Oh, okay. Okay, I find it very difficult to gauge the correct timing for hitting the head as it comes out of the ground if I miss the first hit, so I'm really glad that I did get that, because, like, the head just tries to dive at you from underground, and it, like, again, it kills you in one hit if it connects with you, so not trivial at all. Oh, I need energy.
That's a very weird take on the Worms Armageddon series. This has so many crossovers.
I know, right? Alright, put on Flame, Earth, and Dynamite for the second floor. I'm going to start by using Dynamite against one of these torches so that I can basically remove the element of a strict time limit from this puzzle where I need to light all the torches in a short span of time. That is a very good strat discovery by Rafi. Thank you very much for that, dude. Makes this puzzle infinitely easier. Dash through some of these darkened rooms. I just know where to go to avoid the enemies and get a couple of these torches. Again, there's a strict time limit for that. Pull the sun away so that I have no more than 8 because I need to move across some solar walkways. There we go. There's a armor in a hidden room to the west here, but I'm going to ignore it because I don't need it. Well, based on how I've been playing, I don't know, maybe I do need it, but the idea at this point is just don't get hit. Like, you know, play good. Don't get skill issued. I am going to use a health item before I go into this fight, because I can survive a hit from getting hit from here. Now, this is an awful fight. You can just explain what's going on here.
This is where I was saying, like, some of the bosses here are insanely difficult. This boss has a lightning attack, an orb attack, among other things, and if he gets hit by, like, any one of these, it could be run over. It is really difficult. Probably the most forgiving is probably the lightning attack, in my opinion, which is this one right here. You just see the clouds come out, they track your position, and then they hold it, and then you can run away. It's really easy, but if you get hit by that or these homing orbs, you're toast. The main goal here, as you can kind of see, is constantly trying to get behind the boss.
Yeah, that was not a particularly good fight. Like, I had to do 2 energy refills because I missed a couple of hits, but for the most part, I'm just glad to get through these fights in one piece. Okay, Serpent's Floor. A lot of ice sliding puzzles here, and this is the only part of the run that features an actual, like, quote-unquote skip. You're supposed to go through a lot more of this floor than we actually do in the run, because the central, like, big ice sliding puzzle is not supposed to be passable without doing some extra steps. But by using the dynamite in a specific manner, I'm going to be able to knock myself onto the middle of the ice patch and slide in an unintended way, which will just allow me to skip some of the puzzle. So we're going to set the dynamite against the wall at a specific spot here, slide into this spot, weaken it. Hello? I am having difficulty getting the game to read any sunlight there. Okay, that was really strange. Okay. Got it eventually, though. Actually gained some information that the dynamite will just remain until it's able to detonate. I think what may have happened here is I've incorrectly calibrated the solar sensor during the final save and reset, because I'm pretty sure I keep the light itself on during the last save and reset sequence. But if I'm still able to get full sun, such as here, it's not really a big deal. Doing a specific timing for when to move there for after the centipede has moved out the way there. The centipede doesn't kill you from full, but it does chunk you for 40, which is pretty considerable when at this point I have very few health refilling items, and I don't have any more access to skylights, so the couple of healing items I have in my inventory is the entirety of my healing items for the rest of the game. Oh, that is a bad starting pattern from the serpent. Gonna set a dynamite here, because for some reason, while it's underwater, a dynamite explosion will force it to start jumping around, and it is giving me a really awful pattern. Sick. I'm just gonna... Yeah, I'm just preemptively setting those dynamite. I couldn't even do anything there. Like, what even was that?
Yeah. It didn't even go over the platform once.
Yeah, so this is what's supposed to happen, that it's supposed to try and track you. And, yeah, we previously used to use... oh, it's doing it again. Awesome. Please. What a cool run this is turning out to be, dude. Okay. And now it's above... What even is this? Oh, hang on.
The boss is trolling you. This whole dungeon is trolling you.
Yeah, that behavior is very, very odd. I don't think I've seen that myself. I didn't know you could just spend an entire cycle jumping across the water itself. Generally, it always at least does a couple of them over the platform. That is weird. So, Amber, you were saying you know of a story from Kojima? Is this true? For the solar sensor?
Yes, actually. Yes, actually. So, as we try to get Draco back, I just want to share that in 2003, there was a developer interview with Kojima from Nintendo Dream, and he was asked at one point in the interview, how did the development of Boktai get started, by the way? This was after the release of the first game, Boktai, The Sun is in Your Hand. And Kojima goes on to say that I've been saying for a long time now that I want to make something weird. I had an idea, for example, a CD game where if the player dies, the disc itself actually breaks. I want to make something that weird. Of course, it sounds like a commercial disaster waiting to happen, right? Plus, I had the Metal Gear series to contend with, which always got prioritized over the other projects. But in my head, all these game ideas have been piling up, being warehoused for future use, and one of them was a hazy idea for a game that used the sun somehow. Then the GBA came out, and it was more powerful than the Super Famicom. Wow, handheld hardware is starting to get really, really good, I thought. For a game that uses the sun, I knew a sensor would be the best choice, but I had absolutely no idea how to make that happen. As it happened, a little before that, Konami had been designing some portable handheld medical devices equipped with a variety of sensors. And so when that got released on the market, my previously vague concept of catching the rays of the sun came into clearer focus. If we attached this sensor to a GBA cart, it could work. And that was the official start of everything, and it was right around the end of the development of Metal Gear Solid 2. And Boktai's transparent solar sensing cartridge, there's a solar sensing chip that's a black chip that you can see in the center right of the upper half of the card if you're looking at the front of it, and it primarily detects sunlight through the back side of the cartridge, which is why the Nintendo DS that Dracodan plays on is actually quite a good apparatus to allow for like controlling the sun, because like the back of the cartridge or the UV exposure, because the back of the cartridge is going to be facing towards you, so you're able to aim the light directly at it. But apparently he approached. We are all set. Draco,
We good? Are we alive?
Can you give us something to look at, Draco, and then count us down? Can you share your screen?
I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry.
No worries.
No need to apologize. It actually gave me time to read a little bit about Kojima's idea behind Boktai. All right. Go ahead and count us in to resume.
3, 2, 1. Okay, think we're back. The serpent was just too powerful, knocked some stuff off, but should be fine now. I need to get my bearings a little bit in the fight now. Do I need more dynamite? I think I do. Oh yeah, this is going to be fun. I think I need to set another dynamite. Yes, I will need to. And I think it's still got like half its health. Like, oh man. Okay, can I just... Okay. I'm just pause buffering these hits now to make sure there's no nasty accident. Dude, you...
Oh,
okay.
You were so close.
Okay.
There you go. Good job.
It's dead. I don't care. We're moving on.
There. We got there.
Long story... Okay. Oh, go on. Sorry.
just go ahead.
I was gonna just finish off what Amber was saying. Long story short is the cartridge itself actually has a sensor on the back, a photoelectric sensor, and it just basically that's what's grabbing this flashlight light and translating it to in-game sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, and apparently when Kojima approached Shigeru Miyamoto to give the presentation pitch for the game, it wasn't just a sunlight sensor that he wanted to do. He wanted to include a sensor that measured how your breath smelled because the enemies were vampires and wanted it so that if you ate something garlicky and breathed on the mic, they would all die. Like, I'm not kidding.
That is the worst thing I've ever heard in a good way.
The rest of the staff all hated that idea, and they were like, "Just do the sunlight sensor. Don't do the breath sensor." I will go ahead and link the interview that I found. If you want to read the rest of the interview, it's actually quite interesting. But just the ideas and the idea of the ideas behind the game, and also the whole, hey, let's make a smell-o-vision game. Basically, would
Oh, I'm a little
it's
far down here. I'm
wild.
going to realign here. This is actually a pretty precise slash. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So that's fine. Need transform and sleeping here. I don't have a gun because I never retrieved the solar gun, so I need to be able to use the coffin to shoot the lever over the lava path. I'm going to switch back now to red and just dash out. Since this gate is now open, going to pick up a hidden solar nut here and slash at some solar bamboo to release. That was a really generous amount of health and energy. Wow. I am
Getting dangerously close.
way sorted on energy.
To the flame lich.
Such a great fight.
Lich plus. I have to I think I have to hope now somewhat that my items have enough lifespan. I guess we're about to find out. Because that's one thing I have not noted so far in this run. Your fruits, like your items, they have lifespan. They are perishable items. With enough sun exposure, they rot and they are unusable. And the end of the run here, after doing the last shot before I came to Spiral Tower, even like, playing at, world record pace tier sort of play, you need to play pretty efficiently in order to be able to have enough time. That is an intentional damage boost that I use there. Because there's a very precise spot you can use here, right on against Lich Plus's body, where this rotating flame attack will not hit you. But the most consistent way to get the setup for that is to intentionally damage boost on his body, and it just drops you in the right place. Which is very nice.
That did not exist back when I played.
Yeah, I could hear your reaction to that. It's like, oh, what's going on? And it's like, no, we're doing this on purpose. It's all according to plan.
So Lich Plus is done. Thankfully, that's one fight that went just completely according to plan, went entirely as scripted, and now we're on the final floor of the run. So I need to just dash through a few floors, and then we're going to be coming up to the final boss. So the Immortals have been trying to resurrect this, ancestor piece, and the Immortals themselves are named after the 4 stags in Norse mythology that nibble at the branches of the world tree, Yggdrasil. So there's a lot of, references to Norse mythological figures throughout this game. And if you know much about your Norse mythology, there is a very prominent doomsday beast in Norse mythology, which is really going to show its face here as the final boss. Something within... Oh, wow, I've got past the centipede on the lower path. Nice. Yeah, a doomsday beast with, an all-devouring instinct. And we get prelude to like power of friendship stuff. We've got our friends here delivering these reforged seals to the different seals at the end of each of the main dungeons, because we need to reseal the ancestor piece. Like, you can't kill it, it is a completely eternal being, but we can at least seal it and force it to sleep under the city again. Let's do some more dashing. I do need to scale the sun away a little bit here because there is a solar walkway here, and again that will not trigger if the sun is above 8. And we're going to be transforming to Black Django. This final boss is going to be done as Black Django with the sun active, and I'm going to be using the last item in my inventory for this. So for most of the game, I've had a sunscreen sitting in the inventory, which gives Black Django immunity to sunlight for 60 seconds. And the final boss of this run is going to be Jormungand, the Great Serpent. Now this is a honestly very technical fight, but there's a lot for me to pay attention to, so I'm just going to let Funk take it from here.
Ayo! Sorry. So this is where I was actually referring to during the purification of the Black Dane. That sunscreen is very important here. You need sunlight on this fight. If you don't have sunlight, the boss basically can kill you within like no time flat. He goes like turbo mode. What's happening right now is every so often, the boss will kind of hold steady for a second, allowing Dracodan to hit him. After so many hits, he brings out the tongue. Dracodan specifically places himself in a position where he can hit the head and like the body at the same time. And then when the tongue comes out, it's once again, you can kind of see there. The body
that was
and the
really lucky to end the fight. Getting 2 sets of cleave, like, you can't consistently rely on that.
Yeah, and good job there. Like that, that's basically the fight.
Yeah.
That's normally insanely harder. But the positioning Dracodan discovered in the most recent year really simplifies that fight.
Yeah, it's to the point where like we skip an entire revisit to the city before visiting this dungeon now, because we used to go back and get a spear for the serpent fight and the Jormungand fight. But after enough testing, I just realized like, oh, you can just like do both of these bosses just fine with the katana, and it's higher damage, so like, why not? Just do it with the sword. Just master the blade. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, we used to stand basically in front of the boss so that you would use the spear to get the tongue and the body from in front. But as you can see, Dracodan figured out you can just go from the side and hit both.
Don't blink, because time's in a couple of seconds. This is a really fast sequence again. 10 sun, game's not tuned for this. And...
Hi-yo!
Time.
GG.
Oh dear. I mean, I finished. That's pretty good.
You sure did.
You did well. Good job, Dracodan.
Oh, thank you.
That was a very, very engaging
Thank
run.
you.
It also definitely showed itself as a Kojima game. The more you explained it, the more I was like, oh yeah,
yes,
this is Kojima.
It is a Kojima title. That is definitely a good description for it.
And it's one of those games that Kojima seemed
it
to
sure is a Kojima
love.
series.
Kojima put this in like so many different ones of his games. Like Metal Gear Solid has a callback to the Boktai series. As we've already mentioned, the Battle Network series has actual tie-ins where you can link to this game. Like there's a lot of different call-outs in the Kojima games for this. It seems to be like a favorite of his, I would think.
I'd like to see him continue it because Kojima Productions was what produced Boktai 4 or Lunar Nights. So it'd be really interesting if he ever wanted to go back to this on like the Switch or something.
Do you think he knows about Kura 5?
That whooshed over my head. It's my turn to get
It's
whooshed.
a fan game that recently released.
Oh, wow. That's actually really
like
cool.
The band's spiritual successor almost, but it's a bit more of a spiritual successor, I feel like.
I mean, you try having actual UV technology in your independent fan game.
It's like
I'm not sure if he has the rights to Boktai, but, you know, that'd be really cool
one
if
of
they
the
did.
coolest things, if you think about it. You're playing a vampire game, right? Think of like Twilight, okay? You're playing a vampire game that actually takes sunlight to kill the vampires. It's actually a really cool concept. Like no other game has that.
Also, do you have any shout-outs you'd like to make before we transition into a break for the next segment? I know you're not going anywhere,
I would
but
definitely
still.
just like to shout out. I mean, you know, it's a it's a kind of a cliche, but definitely shout outs to the Boktai community. This has legitimately been one of my favorite experiences in a long time of just like getting into a game properly, getting deep in the weeds, interacting with the people who really know the games inside out. Like, relative to the size of a games community, I've been really stunned with how dedicated and diligent the Boktai community is with like documenting these games. It is unreal the amount of documentation that there is for these games with how few it is. Like, you can count on your hands the number of people who are really involved with speedrunning these games and care about it, and they all pull their weight to an incredible degree. Like, we're about to go into the TAS showcase sequence later, and I could not have even dreamed to start working on the TAS at the start of this year without all the capable people who are involved in the community, like Dr. Hell, Ruffy, Shenef, like Coalescence. Like, everyone has been so helpful and just so diligent with helping figure out how this game works. Like, anytime I've been like, oh, I'm useless with scripting or looking for memory addresses, like I don't know what I should be doing for this thing, like Rafi will just tool away, and then half an hour later, yeah, here's the stuff you want. It's like, it's really something. Like, Boktai fans are an entirely different breed, and I'm really grateful to all the Boktai guys who have made this such a really fun game to go through. And it's the first time I've been involved with like an actively ongoing RPG-esque game that still has a lot of routing to be done, and the process of just continuing to iterate on this route with everyone has been so fun. So yeah, big shout outs to the Tayo network, Boktai speedrunning community. Please consider, if you're interested in these games, joining the Boktai speedrunning Discord. Everyone is extremely helpful and extremely active in discussing and documenting these games. Can't thank those guys enough.
You almost got 145. Jeez.
Yeah. That's fine.
That's more than fine.
All right.
The task is a little bit faster, I'm just saying.
Yeah, fair.
All right, as Draco Dan has alluded to, we are going to be showing the tasks in a little bit, but first we want to take a wellness break, and I want to get out a couple more announcements. Just a reminder, speaking of joining the Boktai Discord, you can also join the official GDQ Discord. If you join the GDQ Discord, you can add the Hotfix role, not the Hotfix role, the Hotfix role, where you can keep tabs on upcoming events, talk with staff, and more. And if you use !Discord in Twitch chat, you'll get more info for that. If you missed out on any of our shows or events, maybe you have caught the end of this segment of this show. We're not done yet, but there's going to be a little more. But you can check out the VODs when they hit YouTube, or all of our past shows over at youtube.com/Games Done Quick. And of course, your subs, Prime Gaming subs, gift subs, and bits cheered here on the GDQ Twitch channel do help support Games Done Quick Hotfix. So if you enjoy watching speedruns, consider subscribing to the channel to get access to our emotes and chat with other subscribers during our replay. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to go stretch our legs, drink some water, take care of ourselves. We'll be right back showing off the tasks and going behind the scenes with that with Draco. We'll be right back after this. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 34 of Passion Project. My name is Amber Cypher, and I am your host. We are back with Draco Dan and Funkmaster MP, as we're going to show off the tasks for Boktai 2, which is the run you just saw completed by, a human being. Now we're going to go behind the scenes with the human being who created the tool-assisted speedrun. Is it speedrunception? Is it taskception? You tell me, Draco.
I mean, it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. It's a speedrun.
But yes, I'm excited for this. So I know you recently, how long ago did you finish this?
I finished this, I think, around the end of October, and it was either October, November, but I spent most of the year on this. I think I started this like in April or May, and I would have been done with this faster, but there were a couple of problem areas that I needed some specific technical assistance with, like some problems that I really didn't know how I was going to solve in this task. And then, of course, the logistical issues of using BizHawk and the sensor emulation that I already highlighted, there was really some unforeseen issues with how some of the behavior is just not deterministic, for lack of a better term. Like, you would not think that just replaying the same sequence of inputs, you would get desyncs and game state entirely changing, but that was happening very, very frequently during this project.
Oh, I believe it. Do you mind if I get one quick announcement in before one last quick announcement before we start the showcase? Of course, I just want to remind everyone, in addition to AGDQ 2025, we also have GDQ's next All Women and Femmes speedrunning event that'll be happening after AGDQ in March. That's going to be Frost Fatales 2025, running live from March 9th through the 16th, and that's going to benefit the National Women's Law Center. So visit gamesdonequick.com/Frame Fatales for more information on the event. And you can also check out the schedule for AGDQ 2025. And Draco, you're going to AGDQ, aren't you?
Yes, that's right.
What are you looking forward to on that schedule?
I am going to need to refresh myself. The only thing that I know that I'm fully on deck for is I'm going to be assisting Metal Glenn Solid in his little Kojima outing. So I do need to make sure I'm up to the task for Metal Gear Solid commentary. Apparently I'm doing some sort of liquid voice acting thing. Apparently. I should be asking money for that. I don't know.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that. And if I can, there we go. We've got your screen going on my end. So go ahead and count us in for going behind the scenes with this task.
Well, we'll get started in 3, 2, 1, and go. So I'm not going to be playing this just linearly. There's probably spots where I'm going to be actually pausing or slowing down, explaining some stuff. I'm going to start the run here, though. You can see it's pretty fast date we set at the start. And we do set a password as normal to be able to start with slightly increased stats. All I'm going to say is, I don't know, if I practice hard enough, maybe my menuing will eventually get this good. Maybe eventually I'll be able to put the password in like this. I don't know, it seems pretty reasonable. I think, I just need to do some more safe state practice for that. I'm not sure.
I love how you could hear the buttons going in and it was...
Yeah, so it's a bit of a shame that password entry went through a few iterations as we learned more about just using the, gibberish as a valid password. So we used to use the expected password, which had a lot of very technical movement through the password screen, and actually using some unexpected input sequences, which looked really cool, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a couple of hundred frames slower. So it's I just can't do that.
Does it still give you the Dark Boy effect?
Yes, it specifically gives you the Dark Boy title, for +2 strength and agility, and starting with a bear nut and a power nut in your inventory. Hey, I didn't hit any spiders. That's pretty good. And I slid along the wall at the last possible pixel. Wow. And then, you still get a lot of cutscene here. Thankfully, this is one of those games where you can just hold B to advance text, which is really good for an RTA run as well. I would be less keen on this game if you couldn't just hold B to advance text, for sure. So...
Oh, it's like Paper Mario 64, thank goodness.
So a lot of the basic movement in the task looks pretty similar to how it does in RTA, but actually optimizing every corner for perfect rounding saves a lot more than you'd expect over a long term. This kill on this skeleton still looks pretty much the same as how it is in RTA, albeit I try to hit it as close as possible so that it looks as swag as possible. And then this is the first deviation from what actually happens in an RTA, where I'm going to get seen by this thing and get damage boosted towards the door. It's quite a heavy hit to take this early into the run, and I would not want to take that damage even if I could consistently set that up in RTA. I can't consistently set that up in RTA, but I'm just not going to accidentally take damage in the task, so losing that much life this early doesn't really matter. Switching to fist for these 3 hits on the zombie is about 10 frames faster than using the sword. So, again, if I have perfect menuing, then sure, I can save a 1/6 of a second by doing a bunch of frame perfect menuing. I guess that works. But otherwise, I would not attempt it. Then we use the same point for switching the text speed and putting on the armor, and a lot of this is just going to be skipped through. It's just a lot of holding B to advance text for the first couple of minutes. And I do go around the front of the school rather than the back. Very technical. Like, oh wow, I actually go around the front of it for a very slightly shorter path. I think that actually probably is RTA viable. I just need to practice a bit. I actually did deliberate at this point whether I should take the shortest possible movement path or the movement path that would allow me to hit the ghouls sooner and get the level up sooner, because I was like, should I have less frames of total movement or more frames at a higher movement speed? And like a lot of things in this task, I just ended up testing both branches and then going with whichever was the fastest. Like a lot of things in this project just boiled down to, okay, I'm going to optimize this option, like option A and option B, and then just compare which is the fastest. Block pushing as well is pretty trivial. Like, this mostly matches RTA, albeit every corner is cut like as tightly as possible, and trying to cut all of these corners like at the tightest angle is like, every time you do that in RTA, it's really asking to get caught on the corner and then not be able to move at all, which did happen a few times in the run that I just did. Like, it does happen. So killing that crow looks a little silly. That crow is only worth 4 experience. It's like, you can just go past it, like, no problem. Like, you don't have to kill it, but without that 4 experience, you really don't get a level up before the first boss fight when you really need it. So that actually is part of the route. My actual methodology for deciding what is worth killing in the EXP route at this point is looking at how much EXP I can get per swing. So these ghouls are worth 12 EXP each, and I can kill them in 3 hits. So whenever I'm killing a ghoul, I'm effectively getting 4 EXP per swing. And so when I thought about it in terms of, well, the crow is 4 experience and I kill it in 1 swing, like, it's literally the same EXP per swing as the ghouls that I'm saying is a no-brainer to just kill. So it's like, well, yeah, just get the crow, obviously. Do need to pick up this power nut here. There aren't really any opportunities to get power nuts other than from chests at this point, and you do need a fair few of them to use through the run, so even in a task it is worth taking the frames to grab that pickup. And then the graveyard is pretty simplistic, but once you get into the basement, there's a couple of tight kills into an RNG manipulation that is entirely impractical in RTA. And I think I was going to discard this idea even for the task after, I think, Shenette originally suggested this, but after I thought through some of the implications, I realized this actually probably is worth the time to do, and it saves you from needing to get some extra kills later as well, kind of unexpectedly. But I mean, it was unexpected when I first thought of it, but once I reasoned through the implications, I was like, I mean, yeah, of course this probably must be faster. So we kill some of these ghouls as normal. Kill the ghouls we pass, pretty normal stuff. But now this ghoul that I'm coming up to here, I mean, I didn't put my stat points in at this point in the RTA run, nor did I ignore this ghoul in the RTA run. This looks a little weird. I'm putting my stat points in at a pretty strange time. Again, I'm going to reach the end of the dungeon and put my stat points in at a more opportune time, but I'm choosing to do it here instead, and I'm ignoring an enemy, which looks a little strange. And to that end, I'm also taking damage on a bat there, which, none of this looks like it really makes sense. But the thing is, as we get into this room here, this is the room where, in the RTA run, I knocked on this central wall to lure this zombie, which is near the door here. If you try and slide past enemies that are, stood in the center of a tile like this, as I mentioned in Spiral Tower, it's effectively random whether you'll get past an enemy, based on whether the game displaces Django by 1 or 2 pixels on the frame that he goes past the corner. Obviously, we can consistently deal with that in a task, but more importantly, we can also exploit this zombie being here in a task. So the zombie in Cathedral is where I did the RTA RNG manipulation using the soft reset sequence. I said, oh, this enemy is the one opportunity you get to get an actual short sword drop. That's true for the enemies that you fight in Cathedral, and I don't want to get involved with this zombie in RTA, because if this thing sees you, it locks the door at the end, and you have to kill it to unlock the door. And you are really underpowered at this point. Like, your stats are low and you only have the basic weapon to deal with this thing, so it's quite a big investment to try and tackle this thing. But this thing can drop a short sword, technically. So, since we can just control RNG at this point, I can just deal with it. And the enemy drops in this game are specifically seeded when the enemies die. So, like, as this thing crouches down to the floor, I do an extra sword slash here, which again looks entirely pointless. But the particle effects generated from when you do these weapon attacks individually advance the RNG. So this advances the RNG by 4, and it's consecutive RNG advancements on 4 different frames. So this actually gives a really good degree of control over putting the RNG at a specific value on a specific frame. Like, if my RNG is 3 off, then I can do a sword slash 3 frames before the item spawn would happen, and it would increment on those 3 consecutive frames. And you have a little bit of leeway to do that, and that's exactly what I do here with this sword slash. It's timed so that the RNG is at a correct value when this zombie dies, so that it drops a short sword. And I'll be able to equip this at a much earlier point than I do actually in the RTA run. And of course, I haven't needed to do a save and reset to get that, so this is like automatically about a minute faster than what the RTA run does. This puzzle solution here is also different from what is done in RTA. I timed both solutions, and this did wind up being like a handful of frames faster for whatever reason. But the only reason I don't do it in RTA is the actual mechanical inputs required are a little more awkward and unintuitive to do. So when the difference is that slight, I would rather do in RTA whatever is the more simplistic series of inputs to actually perform. Same here for using the sword to hit these torches instead of the hammer. In RTA, I'm using the hammer because it's what I already have selected, and I'd rather not switch the weapons. The sword does technically have better frame data than the hammer, but if I don't perfectly do the menuing to switch the weapons, I'm probably losing whatever advantage I would get out of having the faster weapon out, so I think it's really dubious time save at best in RTA. Now, I mentioned coming into this trap in RTA that this is a very precise kill to be able to cleave these skeletons. So why not go for an even more precise variant here in the TAS, which this, I iterated on this strat several times. Like, this is, I think, like the 5th version of a kill that you can do in this room that I eventually settled on. And it's like, I don't know how you can hit that skeleton from that far away, but the game detects it, so I'll take it. It's fine. Like, to me, that looks like a really suspect hitbox, but the game accepts it, so sure, I'll take it. And then you can just cleave the other 2 down in the center. That was the fastest method I was able to find for that trap, and it just works totally fine. Pick up the yellow crystal as normal. I'm going to put my stat points in here and equip the short sword. There's not really a better time to do it. Simply have to wait for that ghoul to walk onto the floor panel to enable the door to open. Do what looks like a really dangerous hammer shot there, where you're just out of range to break the block that you actually need to solve the puzzle. And again, really suspect hitbox there, but it technically works. So it's equivalent what the frame data is, like where you deliver the hammer strikes there, so I may as well just do it at the spot that looks the strangest to do it. And I'm actually going to ignore doing an energy refill at all here. Like, in RTA, you would always do an energy refill here. You need so much energy for the upcoming trap. You just attack so many times. It's like, why would you not take the energy refill there? But apparently I just don't need to. And I don't even need to kill this enemy. So since I killed the zombie in the underground section for the short sword, not only does that get me the short sword sooner, it also gets me 25 EXP that I wouldn't otherwise have. Ghouls are 12 experience and zombies are 25. So since I killed the zombie, I can skip killing 2 ghouls in the normal EXP route. Also, that thing's blind. Also, this thing is also blind. Like, they just, like, nothing sees you in this game, apparently. Even, like, stealth game, Kojima, Metal Gear Solid, nothing sees you. I don't get it. Find the spear as normal. Unfortunately, I don't think you can avoid damage boosting on that enemy. I can on the second visit through the room, but I just was not able to avoid hitting that enemy. And now we're in a pretty nice situation here where I have precisely 10 energy left after all the combat I've been doing. And I need to use 10 energy to get outdoors. When I get back into the main room, gonna just move along those trapdoors in a really suspect fashion, which is, it's essentially random whether you can walk across them like that in RTA. At the movement speed that you have right now, it's a 1 or 2 pixel thing. Like, does Django get moved 2 pixels to the other side on the frame that the trapdoor actually opens? So
you can make it a bit more consistent, like in normal RTA, by procking the trap and then walking off before it actually drops you, and then you can walk over it because you have a certain time frame before it will actually proc again.
That is what I did in the RTA run, but of course in the task you just want to go as fast as possible, so it's just go for the 50-50 of running straight across it and have it open on you and just successfully get the 50-50. But in RTA that's a completely senseless risk to take.
For the folks at home who are following along, who may not know speedrun lingo, RTA is real time, and this game is judged on its IGT. Is that right, or is it?
I would like
RTA?
to use IGT for this game, perhaps, but since we use like save and reset sequences, IGT is just not a workable metric for this game, in my opinion, because it's not a single segment run technically for the IGT running.
Gotcha. And also, if you don't, if the folks at home don't know what a TAS is, it stands for Tool Assisted Speedrun, where we often use like various softwares that allow you to like view memory values in the game and whatnot. And what are we pausing and looking for here?
Just trying to highlight here how. So this room was one of the first big problems that I had to solve with this. Part of the issue that I had with this project is I just don't have a very deep understanding of how a lot of the random mechanics in this game actually operate. So this room has the crystal that can be in any of the skylight spots, but I didn't know how the game actually decides which skylight spot it's in. So thanks to, as I mentioned, the other people who actually play these games are a lot more talented than me at the technical digging around. And Rafi was able to figure out that this game uses a simple frame counter for determining where the crystal is in this room. Like, all the skylights along the north side of the room are generated in a frame count sequence, and then all of the skylights in the south side of the room, it just does them all in an 18 frame count sequence. And it will simply put the crystal wherever the frame counter tells it should be. Like, I assumed that it was a random number generator thing, and I was getting really frustrated that nothing I was doing for an RNG minute setup with a save and reset was working. I was like, why is this not consistent? And then it just turns out, oh, it's because it's literally not controlled by a random number generator. And that's why I do make the distinction between saying, like, something can be RNG or it can be random. But, like, just because something is random doesn't mean it is RNG. It doesn't necessarily have to be controlled by a random number generator, which is an important distinction to make. And so once we knew that, it was like, well, okay, the location is just going to be dependent on the frame data when you reach this room. And I was really agonizing over trying to find the crystal on the first visit to this room, where you just go upstairs immediately. I was like, I really want it to land in the closest spot to the staircase so that I can just get it instantly and not worry about it. And we did some digging around to find out why it wasn't really spawning very commonly there. And Rafi ended up finding out something to the effect of, the game skips the check for the closest light spot location every other cycle, so you only get it like 1 in every 36 frames or something. It's something really silly, and was making me a lot more bummed out about doing that until I just realized, like, trying to think about the big picture, I suddenly realized, like, it doesn't actually matter whether you get it in the closest spot, because this is the final time you visit this room. You come in from outdoors, and you're going to go towards the north wall to be able to go up the staircase once again. So you take this is naturally the shortest path to take. So, like, once you're here, all of these light spots between here, like Django here and the staircase, these are all equal. Like, it's no slower to get it, like, in the northmost spot from here, or the next two down. So I was like, why am I even worrying about getting it in a specific spot? Like, you can just get it in basically any of these northmost spots without losing any frames of movement. And that's exactly what happens here, that you may have seen a little glint there, but I did manage to find frame data here where it just appears in this spot, and it's like, well, it costs 0 frames to get it here, as opposed to if it was in the light spot directly above me or the light spot directly below me. So that was like a lot easier to work with, but it was a really counterintuitive thing to wrap my head around. Like, we were just agonizing over this preconception that we had based on real-time methodology of like, oh, you want to get it in this closest spot to the stairs because that's the lowest possible movement. But like, yeah, I just had to really laterally think about it and be like, well, just because that's how we do it in RTA, it doesn't have to be that way under these conditions, I guess. And yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that sooner, but it seems really obvious in hindsight. But we just spent like a good couple of days thinking about that, for I was just like, why do we even care about getting it in that specific spot?
So someone, when you were talking about the difference between RNG and something that's random, meaning like frame count, for example, someone's asking the distinction here is like RNG is like dice in a tumbler, while frame count is more like a slot machine reel. Is that right? Or is that a little off?
I mean, so the way I would explain RNG in the strictest sense, for instance, this game uses a random number generator where there is a value that's between 0 and 1023. Like, when I was working on this and had a script so that I could look at the RNG as it was advancing, it is just a value that is advancing up to 1023, and then it will reset back to 0 and keep progressing from there. So the simple explanation for that is, at any given time, you are going to get like one of 1024 random states based on what the number is, and that number will advance based on things that happen in the game. Like, as a human, that's very funny, by the way, as a human, like, playing the game normally, you don't see that, and you don't see the like implications of a random number advancing. But under task conditions, since you can rewind and play perfectly and change when events happen at specific times, you have a pretty high degree of control over how the random number generator is advancing. So, like, as an example of something that would cause the random numbers to advance, as I'm pushing this block here, you can like see on the floor, it's a little hard to see since I'm now behind the block, but there's like dust particles that are being generated as the block is being pushed. That is an example of something that actually advances the random number generator in this game. Like, I've found that a pretty easy rule of thumb for Game Boy Advance games is that, like, when particle effects are generated, that advances the random number generator more often than not.
Also, I'd like to take a sec to appreciate the helicopter that you did on the platform coming here. Another callback to the Metal Gear Solid series.
Oh my god. Yeah, we got the, also, yeah, don't try this movement because there's no guardrail at the border of that floating platform. Like, if you fall off the edge, you just fall off the edge and you die instantly. So yeah, don't try that.
Oh, you can fall off?
That's not an invisible wall he's hitting. He's pixel perfect on the edge.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I don't need to damage boost this time. The goals, I'm going to be really close to the goal, but I'm not going to hit it, I promise. Ah, there you go, see. I'm not entirely sure why I could dodge it that time, but not the first time. But, like, I really tried to avoid it the first time, and I just couldn't dodge it. I don't know. Game doesn't work well sometimes. So just going to put the crystals in. This is pretty nondescript at this point. Just skip through here as we just get down into the boss room.
Could you say Sorry, question from chat. Could you say frame counter is like stopping a timer and using the last digits of the milliseconds, while RNG is like going through a list of pre-generated random numbers?
Pre-generated is technically correct, yeah, because the RNG always starts at the same point for this game. Like, if you soft reset this game, the RNG will always start from the same number. So in theory, if you play the exact same way every time, like do the same inputs on every frame, your RNG will be the same every time. Like, that's the basis by how the deterministic factor of making a task even works in simple terms. The fact that if you do the same thing every time, you will get the same results, because video game logic is ultimately deterministic. It can't truly generate a random number. It just starts from a initial seed, and then the decisions you make from there will influence how that seed advances. But if you do it the same every time, it will advance the same every time.
Yeah, let me give a quick example as we go into this boss fight from another game that I actually know about. So the Oracle games from the Zelda series, Oracle of Seasons and Ages, those games, you can advance the RNG with Link's sword swipes. And that's an event that causes the RNG to advance. And you can tell what RNG you might be on based on the sound the sword slashes make. So just as an example, like, it is still deterministic.
Also, my word, this strat is hard. I haven't even attempted this strat in RTA runs, and I'm never going to. I already know that if I ever try to do this fight in this specific method in an actual run, I'm not going to pull it off. I'm going to lose the run. I'm never going to touch doing the fight like this. Like, getting this close to taking damage on the pollen balls and swapping between my weapon this frequently and my enchant, and switching the enchant on and off between attacks, and entering the fight at a specific energy value and using it strictly to end the fight with no energy remaining. Like, there's no way anyone is ever going to do that in real life.
Yeah, to put into perspective, like, he's basically dodging what would be like a bullet hell. Like, he's making the minimal movements between those shots, and he's also near pixel perfect, aligning himself to hit all 4 of those candle lights. It's pretty intense.
Yeah. And like the movement of those pollen balls coming from the center themselves will be like pseudo random. So again, if you try that sort of thing in RTA, it doesn't matter if you have the movements down perfect. If you just constantly do those movements, well, the shots coming at you might come in from a different angle, so you can still get hit. And then it's like, well, how do you deal with that in a real scenario?
The added difficulty in RTA is you'd have the lag as well generated during that fight, because that fight's a very laggy fight.
Slightly different method here for the coming into this room when you have to knock these 3 panels online. I want to actually go back to just, this is a really small detail which is easy to miss, but I really, really like this. I'm gonna like drag the coffin onto the central one here. So I do an extra micro drag to bring the coffin slightly further onto the floor panel here, because if I don't drag the coffin that extra little bit, it's not actually considered on the floor panel, so I'll just let it like play through here. I'm going to drop it, push the block, and then pull it again. Like, that micro drag is completely necessary to put it on the block. That just doesn't work otherwise. I guess I don't care about getting this power nut from the corner of the room. I did in the run that I just did, the real run, but I do not need that power nut. I already have enough to get back to town, and starting in the next dungeon, going to be able to get power nuts at random, which in a task environment is not so random. Again, you have a pretty good degree of control over like making stuff drop within reason. Perfectly put in a second power nut. It was while I was working on these kinds of screens as well that I discovered that if I want to be perfectly optimal, even in RTA play, I actually don't want the sun to be constantly on, just blasting while I'm outdoors on these screens. Because as I mentioned, the undead enemies, like these ghouls, they die when exposed to sunlight. And I discovered from working on the tasks like this that every time an enemy dies, it generates 1 frame of lag. Because it's like calling an item check or something to that effect. So basically, every time you just have the sun on outdoors and you're causing enemies to die, you're losing 1 frame. Just saying. Gotta save those frames. Oh yeah, the purification. So I mentioned in the RTA run how you can reduce lag in this fight by using camera scrolling. So if you want to try doing something like this, be my guest. So I'm going to need to play that back, and I'm going to need to slow that down, because I really wish that I could just show the input display for this section. This is one of the most like unreasonable input strings in the entire movie, and it lasts for all of about a second. I'm gonna slow this like right down.
I believe the brackets will slow it down. Yeah, there we go.
So I just want you to bear in mind here, like once this actually gets started, that I'm not making any unnecessary movements here with Django. Like I'm only using the input directions that make sense to use. Like once I start slashing towards this generator, I am trying to face towards it. Like I'm trying to face to the right. So like I start by moving upright like this. I'm gonna like start slashing towards it, and I'm gonna start using the shoulder button, the R button, to scroll the camera down to try and keep the boss off screen to reduce lag. And hopefully with the game running this slow, you're gonna see that like it doesn't quite look right. Django doesn't quite look right. Like, why is he turning around like that? Why is he facing any of these directions?
That ain't natural.
I did not do that. You can, I can show the input file. I do not use any frames where I'm facing those directions. They just happen. That's not on purpose. A bit of a rendering problem that will go away when the video, there we go, when it updates. And then once again, so yeah, in total, I was able to save like 14 frames on this purification, which, although that's just a fraction of a second, again, when these are supposed to be scripted length segments, like you can't quote-unquote speed this up because the boss just dies as fast as it dies. 14 frames is a lot of frames to save on something that should be the same every time.
Yes.
Skip through a bunch of text, there's nothing going on, thanks game. Oh boy, so I'm gonna come into the second dungeon. So I can't really show the way this is panning out without having like on-screen scripts to really show what is actually happening with the RNG, but you notice as I come in here, I've gotta do 2 hits on this block to destroy the block and get access to the dungeon. I have my enchant active here, like I have my soul enchant active, and all this really does is waste energy. Like this is something that doesn't make sense to do. It's not something that you would do in RTA, but again, this is something that you can do to control the way that the RNG advances. And the main puzzle that you deal with in this second dungeon is, if you remember when I got to the desert section, there's that grid of screens where there can be a couple of stone tablets in 8 different screens. And in a task, you obviously want to go with the fastest possible combination. Now, this was one of the biggest problems that I had to solve, and I had to wait for a lot of scripting help from some of the other guys. I needed to wait for them to effectively provide me with the memory addresses that show which screens the tablets are going to be on, because the game dictates the positions of these tablets at this point. When this loading screen occurs, like as I'm coming into the dungeon here, the locations for the stone tablets are now predetermined. It is based on what the RNG value is. It generates them when you enter the dungeon. Nothing you can do from this point on while you're inside the dungeon will change where these stone tablets are. And so this was like a big problem for me before I had like a lot of help with how I was gonna like have scripts to monitor this and actually figure this stuff out, because I knew that I was coming up to this point of the movie, and I was like, well, if I'm working entirely alone, I'm not even going to know what my desert RNG is until I get through the entire dungeon, which could take ages. I could be working for weeks to get through this dungeon, and then find, well, this seed doesn't work, back to the drawing board. And it's like, there was no way that I was going to do that without additional assistance. So
to give some perspective as well with these types of tasks, like it's not something where you can do like Draco Dan was saying, where you do say 2 weeks of work, you realize it's the wrong seed, and then you go back, to this section only and change a frame or two, and then you're fine. No, a lot of the times it changes like the RNG at every step of the way. So now you have to kind of remap those 2 weeks again to check to see if that one's working.
And spoiler, this dungeon is the most RNG manip heavy section of the run. There is constant RNG manipulation going on through this entire dungeon, and I had to rework this dungeon 3 times. I hated life once I was done with this.
About how long is this segment once it's finished? Like in real time?
I'm not sure, actually. Probably about 10-15 minutes, I'm not sure.
And, like, as someone who has been a consult for TASs in the past, because I was one of the consults for the Sonic 3D Blast TASs that the Only Kid had produced when they were still with us, and I also watched the process of Sega Junkie developing the Donkey Kong Land 3 TAS. And it's just those have stages that are like 2 minutes, 1 minute, minute and a half, less than a minute, and those were agonizingly long to develop. I can't imagine doing 10 to 15 minutes 3 different times. And yeah, sure, 10 to 15 minutes in real time is not that much, but then you get to you have to understand just how long tassing actually takes.
Absolutely.
So if you ever get the opportunity to watch someone try to task, or, you know, someone explains how it works, like, please go look that up and you'll understand the perspective of why Draco hates his life by the end of this segment.
I know that there are still improvements possible in this dungeon, but I got to the point where I was like, I'm not doing it again. I don't care. I'm just gonna, if I do the entire project again on a future version, I'll worry about it then. I am not doing this dungeon again. Right now, like, yeah.
Oh yeah, no.
So the first manip that we really have here is mentioned that you need a lot of power nut drops. You need to be able to push blocks fast, you need to be able to drag the coffin fast, and I skipped getting a consistent one out of a chest in Cathedral, because it's a bit out of the way, it takes a few seconds to get. These slimes can all drop power nuts, so why not just get them to drop? I need to kill this slime anyway, it's in my way, and it's part of the EXP route. So I'm just going to kill it. I'm going to start my energy charge at a specific point and turn the sun off at a specific time so that I summon moonbugs instead. And the combination of those two events advances the RNG at different rates so that when the enemies die, I actually get a power nut drop from there. So I'm at that specific moment, I'm technically doing 3 different things at once, where I'm waiting for a quote-unquote random drop, I'm refilling my energy, and I'm refilling my life, all at the same time. Like, I'm pretty happy to be able to do an energy refill and a random drop at the same time, but, like, being, like, triple productive is just like, oh, triple productivity. Love it.
So just to clarify, for you to manipulate the RNG here, are you looking at, what the table will show? Are you doing trial and error? Like, how's the process that you normally would go through to get the RNG where you want it?
So I mentioned how the level of documentation for this game is something else, to the point where, like, the full drop tables have been published by Coalescence. Like, he's published an entire table showing, like, okay, here's, like, the entire 1024 RNG states, and here is whether you'll get a common drop or a rare drop on this specific RNG seed. That's what I'm typically referring to, yeah. And there are certain clusters within that range where you will have, like, more values that can give a drop and some where you can't get a drop. So specifically when you're looking for rare drops, which are only a 1.2% chance, like, there's like 12 specific entries on the 1024 possibilities that can give you a common drop. So if I'm in a section of the RNG range where it's like, okay, I need to go through like 200 values before there's even a rare frame, that's like a particularly big problem. It's like I need to do something to advance the RNG quite a considerable amount to even be able to get a rare drop at that point.
And to clarify that, is this the same for every single enemy? Like, or is some enemies, it will be like a value of 1, the other enemy will be, say, 10, et cetera, et cetera?
It is independent of the enemy, yeah. The game just looks at the RNG2 value, and if it is a value that will trigger a common drop, it will give you that enemy's common drop, or a value that can give that enemy's rare drop, that enemy will give you their rare drop. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like, a kind of lookup table almost.
Yes, essentially. So coming into this room here is something that you would never find from just watching RTA runs, is that when you get into this room, you absolutely must have the sunlight disabled because there is solar wind in this room. The same thing at the very top of Spiral Tower that was like pushing me across the solar walkway. Solar wind is something that happens when the sun is on, and the stronger the sun is, the harder the wind blows. It will push you in random directions. This is another room where the narrow pathways are sheer cliffs. Like, there's no guardrails. If you just fall off the side of the cliff, you fall and you instantly die. So it is not an option in RTA to be inside these rooms with the sun enabled. Like, you can't control how you get pushed, and it's just, you're asking to die. Like, you would never ever tackle these rooms with the sun on at all in RTA. Instead, in a task, we just have the sun on at maximum, and we just get pushed in the correct direction so that we can go through the room faster.
Also, you see him being pushed through actual just fire.
Yeah, the flame hitboxes are a little strange, and it took a lot of work for me to be able to actually get through some of these flame jets correctly. I'm actually going to rewind because this reminded me of a nice little piece of trivia. So I only have this in the form of a clip now, but so right here, it's like I'm getting pushed. Am I getting pushed directly to the right here? Yes. So I ended up in a really weird situation here where, sorry, I'm having to do a little bit of tooling around here. Get back here. So while I was going through possible ways to do this, I ended up in a position where I don't think I could even repeat this if I tried. So you've got the tile that I'm about to go on, like this floor tile that's next to the floating platform. And then you have the floor tile above the floating platform where there's the torch that you can light. So technically, these two floor panels, like on either side of the floating platform, they are technically adjoined. You can't actually cross over them. Like, if you try, you'll just basically be walking into a hard corner, or in this case, you'll like fall off into the void. But somehow when I was working on this, I accidentally managed to land in the correct position so that when the wind pushed me to the right, I got sub-pixel pushed over the adjoining space and I landed inside the torch. I was like, I had no idea that was even possible. Unfortunately, I don't think you can exploit it in any way, but like, I didn't even know that could happen. And I'm fairly sure it is sub-pixel dependent. And I know for a fact that sub-pixels do exist in this game because your position is judged by coordinates, which can be wildly different while you're visually on the same pixel, unfortunately. I'm going to come back through this room and have some more solar wind pushing me. Was not able to use it effectively for this first leg of getting through, but once I get off this platform, I'm also going to, I do a slash here to advance the RNG so that the solar wind is going to behave in a certain way when I get off this platform, and this wind push just could not be any better, literally. Like, it's just ideal! Like, I was so happy when that worked. It's vicarious joy for my past self, knowing how painful this was to get to work the first time around.
Your joy brings me joy. I just want you to know that.
Also, that's a very nice micro-optimization there, where I end the solar charge early and let a couple of passive ticks happen as I'm walking out of the light source. That's... when I first showed the working project to Koa, this section, Coalescence, the previous world record holder, he like noticed that as he was watching. I was like, yeah, like, he still got it. He still knows the game inside out. Like, it's awesome. Did I get 3 power nut drops here, or just 2? I guess we're about to find out. 1. Okay, I just got 2. Yeah, I guess I just got 2 there. It was pretty difficult to have like an RNG cluster that actually worked here And I actually deliberately use a enchanted hit here. Like, you can see as I'm hitting the enemies for 28 there, I do an enchanted hit here for 7. Again, this is not something you would ever do in RTA. These slimes are resistant to all elemental damage. But that was just necessary to be able to manipulate both of the power nut drops here. Right. So, I kind of don't want to look at this room, knowing how badly this messed me up in the run that I just did.
You did fine.
I hate this room, and that run that I just did validated every bit of hatred I have for this room, but oh well. Thankfully, it looks really cool in this task, and I really wish it could go this clean every time I do it in RTA. Like, why can't they just cooperate like that? Why can't they cooperate like that?
Okay, yeah, that was a bit cleaner.
Yeah. Now, seeing how that panned out there, this trap took me a lot longer to work on than it probably should have, because as early as this point in the run, I knew that I was going to do a very particular setup for the katana manip, and it requires getting a lot of weapon drops, which I'm currently really ill-equipped to do. I need 3 rare weapon drops from the golems in this area, and you don't kill very many of them. I kill 4 of them in that trap, and I didn't manage to get any mace drops from them. I was like, oh, that's a big problem. Like, I'm only going to kill, like, 3 more, basically. Or, well, no, I kill a few more, but I trim down the EXP route so that I really minimize the number that I'm killing. So it's like, I'm not going to have that many more opportunities to get a rare weapon drop, and I still need 3 of them. And I'm not necessarily going to have a high degree of control over what happens. So it's like, it was looking like a pretty big problem. So I'm going to just skip ahead a little bit. This is pretty nondescript section, although there's a slightly different solution used here for this 4-color puzzle, which I'll at least show.
And we might be going through this like pretty quickly. There's a lot to it. Like, we're already around like 45 minutes in, and you know, we're maybe what, a third of the way through. But if you are interested in seeing any of this is all on YouTube. Honestly, I would suggest taking a look at it like in your spare time if we, don't end up getting through it entirely. It is a really, really cool run. Especially for anyone who's played Boktai, you can definitely see like some things that are like, oh my goodness, I didn't know you could kill it that quick, or you could do it that quickly. And like we got a maze. Oh,
yeah, there's one weapon drop. So
you're not supposed to have that.
In the first instance, like, I need some energy here to begin with. Like, my energy is low, I can't progress without it. So I know exactly the amount to restore by to advance the RNG. Like, as Django is charging, these particle effects coming towards the hand, these are advancing RNG. So by getting a specific number of these, I'm able to put the RNG to a specific value so that when I kill this golem, also the acid spit from the zombie there, as the vapor is rising from that spit, that is also advancing RNG. So I need to kill this clay golem at a specific time so that a mace drop happens there. So that's one. I only need 2 more. I'm only going to kill like 4 more clay golems, and I only need like 2 more red drops. That sounds pretty reasonable, right?
I love how for the RNG mapping, like, you're fighting against your own abilities having like particle effects. You're fighting against like enemy abilities firing at you having particles, etc., etc. It's a push and pull.
Now, I don't necessarily need the energy that I just charged there, but again, I do need the RNG to be at a specific spot here, because I'm about to come into the axe, and you get 3 chests when you kill this thing. You get the key, you get the dynamite magic, and you get the tarot card. The contents of the tarot card chest are random, and we mentioned during the RTA run, there is a grand total of 1 card that you want to see, which is called the Tower, which has a normally 3.9% chance of spawning, and that is it right there. By using a combination of the amount that I recharged before I came back indoors, as well as intentionally missing one of my hits in this fight during downtime, I'm able to manipulate the tower to drop, and this is going to stay in the inventory for the entire rest of the run. Skip ahead just a bit here, where, again, very lean EXP route here, where in this room in RTA, I killed all four of these golems for experience. but here I'm only killing the one that's directly in my path, and I didn't get a mace from it. So I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get a bit worried. Then I went to this one. And, oh, I got a weapon drop, but that's not a mace. Like, that's a base hammer, which I don't need. I didn't actually plan for this to drop, but on the normal movement route, this takes 0 frames to pick up. So, like, sure, but I also don't really want that. So now at this point, I was like, I'm getting really worried that, like, there are only 2 more golems that I'm going to kill in this dungeon, and I need both of them to drop a mace. And it's a 1.2% chance from either of them, where some, like I say, some of the values in the RNG cluster, some of the ranges just do not work very well. So it's like, I really don't have a lot of room for maneuver here. Thankfully, in this desert, you have a very high degree of control over how the RNG advances, since you can choose as and when you want to recharge your missing energy. And I do need to refill energy to basically maximum before I go back indoors here. This is also the section where I'll finally get to see where my stone tablets are. The thing that was seeded right at the start when I entered the dungeon. Like, this has been predetermined since the start of the dungeon where these tablets are going to be. So rather than me going around in a huge circle, I'm just going to find one. Going to come onto this next screen after a mini charge so that I can get a mace from this golem into 2, the next tablet. Come onto the 3rd screen, extinguish this little fire, and yeah, we're done. That's all 3. Fastest possible combination you can get, just visit the first 3 screens, go straight to the middle. This is about 30 seconds faster than what I typically get in a run if you need to go through like the entire go around in a sequence rigmarole. And I really wish you could consistently get that in a run, but you just can't. So I do still need energy to come into this last part of the dungeon, so I may as well grab some. Specifically, I may as well grab exactly the amount I need to set up another further RNG manipulation. There is 1 more clay golem in this dungeon, and I still need 1 more mace drop. I actually need to get pretty creative with the RNG manip that I'm using here as well, because not only am I using a specific solar charge there, as I get into this room, there is, you may be able to see occasionally, well, you'll definitely see now, there is what is called solar bamboo in this room, where if you hit these twinkling crystals, they will release these solar bugs and moon bugs that you can use to refill your resources. These also advance the RNG as they're flying around, so by releasing a specific number of these at a specific time, it gives me even more control over what the RNG is going to be on a specific frame. So by letting these just fly around, they are independently advancing RNG as everything else is going on. So that when I go downstairs here and come to this final clay golem, by using a specific set of hits, yay, I actually got all the weapons that I needed, and that is, yeah, it's basically 1 in 100 for each of them. So if you actually wanted to get all 3, like 3 of those in a run, just like turn the game on and just hope for 3 of those from like 3 different enemies, that's basically a 1 in a million chance, like in literal terms. Now, this is actually, as far as the EXP routing goes, this is the part of the entire movie I am least happy with here. I had no real option but to do something here that looks extremely inelegant. But I know from the general EXP timing that this is, like, technically worth it, but this looks so bad. Like, bear in mind, like, I'm playing a task. Everything is perfect. This is supposed to be completely optimal. I'm taking the shortest path possible, right? Like, this is going to be, like, perfect play. So I'm going to go out here and kill these mummies again. I'm going to wait for them to come towards me. Like, that is technically worth it, but God, that looks bad. That does not look optimal at all, but I just know that there isn't really a faster source of EXP than that. And I really do need the EXP from those, because if I don't have that 80 EXP, I won't get a level up after this next boss, which will enable me to have 25 agility at an earlier point. And 25 agility means higher movement speed. So it's like, am I really going to give up having higher movement speed? Like, that's just, obviously that's not tolerable. Like, I can't accept that. So I really had to just route in a way to get these, and there really isn't a better way to handle this, unfortunately. As we come into the boss fight itself, it's looks pretty similar to how it does in RTA, albeit since there is a lot of downtime in this fight, I'm able to leverage a lot of silly play-around style movement, where I'm like avoiding this guy's hits by the narrowest possible margins at times. And I guess now Django can like pseudo moonwalk into position here. Did I do the same thing? Yeah, that's pretty standard there. Oh, the 33 hit there is pretty unusual though. And just, dodge this by the narrowest margin again. I don't remember if I did another stutter step here. I do a lot more of the stutter stepping in Durthrow. No, I just moved normally there. Apparently at this point I was just getting sick of it and deciding like, I just want to be done with this dungeon. I want to be out of here. I don't want to look at this place ever again, so I just want to get out of here.
Gotta ask, is the stutter step increase or decrease leg frames?
It doesn't affect it at all.
No, okay.
There's actually not much lag in this fight at all, aside from when he's in the black hole at the center and you're slashing him. There is a lot of lag there, but otherwise there really isn't any lag going on in this fight, which really surprised me. Like I fully expected there to be a lot. Like I thought that this fight was going to be a nightmare for lag optimization, but when I actually got into it, I was like, there's actually not really anything you need to do here. And quite frankly, the cop-in backtrack here is just normal. It's just extremely optimal, but this looks pretty similar to how you would do it in RTA play. Is the... Oh yeah, I guess the only thing that looks strange here is like, Alright, so let me get here. Alright, so this is a game you can play along with at home. So, you're going in the menu, and you're going to select the power nut to use. So you get into the item menu here. If the screen catches up. Yeah, here we go. So you get in the item menu here. You're selecting the first item slot in the inventory. What is your input string to get to the power nut, which is the banana-looking thing that is currently like 2 across and 1 down? What input string do you use to reach this? Do you do right, down? Or do you do down, right? Or do you do, like, right, down, right? Like, which of those would you choose?
Can you do a diagonal? Is that
You cannot do a diagonal, no.
Okay,
if you do both directions on the same frame, you will... So, Funk, what input string would you use to reach this power nut?
Me personally, I would have done 3 rights and then a down.
Okay, so, yeah, if you did, like, any combination of these, like, inputs, you are unfortunately dead wrong. The right answer is to do... up, right, up.
What?
Because every time you select an occupied inventory slot, you get several frames of lag because the game needs to draw text.
What?
Okay.
So it's fast. So even though it's more total inputs to go through the empty slots, it's virtually lagless and it is much
I'm
faster.
sorry, what?
It's really
no,
silly.
it makes sense.
And I
Also,
have to do this. This is something I have to consider for the entire run. Like, I have to consider when I'm getting items in the inventory so that it'll affect what order other items go in the inventory, because I need to consider, okay, as inventory space frees up, how is that going to improve my optimal input strings for, like, as these inventory slots become unoccupied, it's going to change the best way for me to menu through the menu. Like, it's really silly. It's really, really silly.
Also, I'd love to take a moment to appreciate that it's called a power nut, but that is totally a banana. It's a banana.
This room still sucks.
Like, when he first said, like, the bananas counting down, like, I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And then later started calling them power nuts. I was like, what now?
I mean, they can make you feel powerful.
It's a banana.
Power of potassium.
Oh, the bat's
But it is
chasing
a
me, but it
banana.
didn't get me this time. Ah!
Beating up that coffin, though.
And so...
Even got the text box.
Yeah, so although I didn't plan for the bat to be chasing me, the fact that it flying around advances RNG, and the fact that I got a very important RNG manip after that means I guess the bat helped with RNG manipulation. I didn't ask it to help, but I guess it helped.
And the bat's out here like,
this purification looks... I'm just going to let this purification speak for itself. All I'm going to say is I didn't really have to do any lag reduction in this one either, for the most part, but this looks very silly. Alright, see you later.
Oh, I see.
Idiot, get owned.
That's a funny one, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the shots look pretty suboptimal as well. Like, if you view that slowed down, like it looks like I'm shooting really late, but I really am doing the shots at the first possible frame. Like, the hitbox for when you can knock the Immortal back into the coffin actually has a pretty considerable delay, to the point that, like, if I do those shots a frame earlier, it just doesn't connect with the hitbox. Like, it looks really silly, but that is the earliest that I can do it.
That feels like it would be so inconsistent on RTA, because basically you're relying on the boss to spawn within like a 50% halfway through the circle, right? Or the
so the initial behavior of the Immortal coming out of the coffin will always be the same based on what your position is, but you would still need to like strictly do it at the same time every time. Yeah, there's a reason I don't do it like that in RTA. All right, so warning, menuing inbound, don't try this at home. Oh, I love it.
It is
we're
very
gonna go and
satisfying.
craft the katana. So I'm gonna, as this is going on, I'm gonna try not to slow this down or repeat this. I'm gonna just try to relay all the relevant information as this is going. I have like 2 30-second mini games to do this. Maybe I can explain what's going on this time. I'm not entirely sure. So I want to craft a katana. I don't have swords that can make a katana. Instead, I've got the bunch of maces that I got. So I'm going to use the short sword and the mace. This is going to result in a spear, because when you use different weapon types, you always get the opposite weapon type. And since I'm using different weapon types, the level of the resulting weapon can also be entirely random. It can either be between like -6 to +6 of the target level. So I need to get the maximum possible level spear out of this, which is effectively a 1 in 13 chance. I'm also not really playing this minigame, as you can see, because it generates lag to do so. All I did was get a really janky first hit, which didn't really connect. And this is going to result in me getting the highest possible level lance that I can get out of this, which is like -10 quality. It's a really bad lance, but it's the correct type of weapon, so fine. Now I'm going to do a second craft with the mace that I have remaining and the lance. These are also opposite weapon types, and if I get the 1 in 13 for getting the highest level possible, this can result in a level 17 sword, which is the katana level. But the katana also has a separate check. If you remember, I did an RNG manipulation to get this, which I didn't even get first try in my run, where I needed to start the game in an 8-frame window. That's because there is effectively just a 1% chance to be able to confirm the craft for a katana, and that is based on a frame counter. Whereas for the task, we just go through as fast as possible and naturally land in that 4-frame window. So, like, I do need to go back and show just a little bit here, where I'm gonna start this second craft basically as fast as possible, as fast as the game will allow. So this really did just happen to fall in the correct range of, like, once the game is on, there is a frame counter just going constantly that determines whether you can craft what is called a rare weapon, which the katana is. It is currently, at this point, a 1 in 100 chance. Every 4 frames out of the 400 cycling frame count will give me the craft that I need. And I just happen to not really need to waste any frames waiting for that frame count to align here. I was just able to go, and I was able to get the correct value. I also need to absolutely spam hits here, because I need the RNG to be at a specific value when this craft ends, otherwise I don't get the correct weapon. And the only way I was able to do this was by spacing these hits out, so that at the end of each of these cycles, I'm doing like 2 hits back to back this causes the RNG to advance differently to if you just space them out normally, because the animations for the sparks are overlapping. And the number of great hits that I'm getting is also required to guarantee the weapon that I need, because getting the SP effect chance on the weapon is a separate check which is being ran independently to everything else, and it goes off of how many great hits you got. And although I was getting some crafts where I was able to get the correct weapon, I wasn't getting the SP effect on it. So the only way I was able to really get it to work was to do enough great hits that guaranteed getting the effect, because the game looks at how many great hits you got and multiplies that by 3. So by getting 33 hits, you have the base 1% chance, and then it adds a 99% chance onto it, which gives you a guarantee of getting the SP effect on the katana, which makes it stronger based on your agility. So now, I'm aware that we are like overrunning a bit already, so I'm going to skip ahead to some real highlight moments. So first of all, I'm going to go to what the farming kills on these enemies can look like if you are actually really, really good, better than a human can ever be. And the only reason I'm able to even do these is because I have a spare mace left over, which is giving me a ton of attack power.
I thought you were going to use the, what's it called, bombs to light them on fire or something.
Not quite. That's they become really erratic and unpredictable when you do that.
Okay.
Next time we get to a room like this, going to do the same thing. Knock on the wall in the center to lure them, grab the key, and then use the mace again to hit them. This is extremely inconsistent to try an RTA because their iframes are extremely deceptive. So it's like, there's a reason that I don't do this in RTA. I mentioned during the run. Like, I know that this can be done, and this can be up to like 15 seconds faster, but there is a good reason that I am not doing this. Also, I like this. So I mentioned like, oh, the enemies in this game are blind. But again, these things are literally blind. They don't see Django. They only hear Django. So you can do strange stuff like this. Like, they can't hear where you are if you're just standing still. It's fine. Go through to what the sunlight kill looks like, actually. Yeah. Because I did get it pretty good in the run, but like when this is done optimally, it is so satisfying. And this is beyond efficient for like the amount of EXP you're getting for the number of seconds invested. This is disgustingly efficient. Like, I'm not even stopping, dude. I just turn around and do one hit. Like, I'm not even stopping. It's like one earth. Dude. Alright. And now, I'm gonna get revenge on Cheyenne. So, like,
oh, no.
Just
let's see how you do it here.
Oh, yeah, show this.
Alright. Funk, I mean, Funk, you're not gonna be ready for this, alright? Because when you have the katana, like, I already knew that having the katana available for this fight saves a lot of time. I didn't know it saved this much time. Also, nice helicopter.
Disclaimer, I saved watching this for this run, so I haven't seen this.
Oh, thank you. Alright, here you go.
What?
Yeah.
Goodbye.
You do a fair bit of damage when you have a endgame power weapon at this point in the game. It must be said.
Is that like a 3 or 4 second Cheyenne?
Something like that, yeah.
Jeez.
Now, alright. So, you know what? I said, like, oh, I made mistakes with routing when I did this. Like, say the Remains dungeon I had to rework a couple of times, right? So this was a particularly embarrassing section for me to get wrong. So in RTA, this is the point where you return to town and you craft the katana. So I don't need to do that because I already have the katana. So when I reached this point in the task, I was just like, all right, I'm just moving on. I'm going into the boss fight. So I was like, come down here, helicopter, nice, and just go to the door here. That's what I did. So I went through the rest of the dungeon and I did the boss fight and I did the puzzle after and I did the purification and I started the tarot card collection. And I got back to this dungeon, and I realized that I made a colossal blunder. Do you realize what I did wrong?
I don't.
So,
you forgot to heal?
No, so because, like I say, in RTA, this is the point where you go back to town, which means you have to take the magic circle here. Like, you just take the magic circle and you warp out. Yeah. I didn't take this magic circle because I was like, I'm not going back to town. This warp circle is not active until you do that. So I got back to here like 20 minutes later in gameplay, and I was like, there's no warp here.
I forgot about that. Oh no, that's horrible.
That is possibly the biggest blunder I made throughout this entire project.
Oh boy.
So I had to redo the entire second half of this dungeon and the start of the next scenario because I forgot to do one thing here. Because it just didn't even occur to me that I needed that warp to be active.
It leads back to the comment we made earlier that even if you change maybe a couple frames, you reverse the task, you change a couple frames, you have to remap everything because it changes all the all the RNG, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and that's what we call desync.
Yep, and it may or may not be the case that the Durathror fight coming up here also, all of the positions for all of the things that you're doing in this fight are completely RNG dependent, so I had to rework this fight multiple times as well. Thankfully, this wasn't too time consuming, but it was still very annoying. But I'm pretty happy with how this fight looks in general, and there is a lot of play around movement in this fight, so I'm just going to let you enjoy this, I guess. There is more downtime than uptime in this fight, so I just have fun with movement generally.
Right, because when you do this RTA, you have to use the bat to echolocate the boss.
Yeah. But here I just know where the correct bulbs are.
Yep. I love how you're moving multiple ways, facing multiple ways while you move, et cetera, et cetera.
That definitely looks like it should hit me, but apparently not. Then we get a level up, Oh, yeah, so then we can go to strength 50. And then, I mean, you probably won't be able to, see that the coffin drag speed is faster, but I promise you're dragging the coffin faster than normal here. And this actually saves a pretty appreciable amount of time through this backtrack. Albeit, this is the same as how it looks in RTA. You just drag the coffin perfectly around all the corners. I do want to highlight here, though, coming out of here, this was another problem that I had to solve based on, the energy that I originally had when I reached this point. So, I still need to, at this point, I need to get back onto the pile driver screen, and then I need to activate the pile driver. That requires 10 energy, because I need to destroy a dark root, and I need to turn the pile driver on. I don't have 10 energy right now, and I don't want to stop to actually do a manual recharge, because that's really sloppy, dude. So, I mean, what to do? I mean, I do still need to do the save and reset. This is unavoidable, because you need to send the coffin back to town. That's always going to be the case. So how about I just spend most of my remaining life by turning the sun on so I can get a passive little tick of regen of energy. So that I just about have enough to turn the pile driver on. And I am not exaggerating when I say I originally had problems with reaching this specific point and not having enough time between I needed to get an extra tick of energy from sunlight damage. I would not have enough time to turn the generator on here and then start the purification before I died from sunlight damage in my first couple of attempts here. I was working with incredibly narrow margins the first time I reached here, and I needed to honestly make some compromises to get this to work. And I mean, you skip cutscenes, whatnot. Most of this looks pretty much the same. I do take the liberty of dodging some of these by a very narrow margin.
I love how you just stood there. That first set.
The second set's even tighter, yeah. I did try and make sure to dodge those by the narrowest margin. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, people's reward for getting this far through, watching the task to this point is seeing perfectly optimal dash movement it's just a treat. Gonna get through the first couple of instances of moving around first. This screen here just...
Oh, that's satisfying.
And this entire segment going back through Dark City, just like, I wish I could move like this. Basically, it's a Sonic game now, when you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
He's kind of blue.
Am I crazy? I thought Dash drained energy.
Nope.
It doesn't. I remember seeing that in the RTA run earlier, that it just didn't. And I was like, oh, that's so good.
It's Sasuke's Zero Shift that costs energy.
Oh, am I mixing them? Okay.
So if you are savvy to how hitboxes tend to behave in this game, the kills that I get on the Gusts in this next room coming up here, this should look pretty satisfying to you as well, I think. It's the only way that I could get a back hit on that last one without going entirely out of my way. And again, I've got absolutely no resource here. Like, I've got no life, I've got no energy. Like, I've got absolutely nothing to work with here. And I need to get out of this screen. So I'm going to do a life refill here, and I'm going to also turn the sun on at the same time. And my life gets very, 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 very low. It's already very, very low, but it's going to get even lower. Like,
oh.
Like, I couldn't really have spent any life anywhere else earlier in the movie and gotten away with that specific maneuver.
So as we are winding down here through this segment, are there any other highlights you wanted to quickly go through?
Yeah, let's skip to boss fights. That's what everyone's here for, right? So
you should definitely show off the tarot card use.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I mean, we've got Blue Duval in here. So I mentioned, oh, this can be a real RNG blowout. There's just a lot of variance on this fight, or you can just get a fight like this.
Ayo! That was pretty quick.
Yeah, dude. I've matched that kind of pace a couple of times in RTA, but you need extremely favorable RNG to be able to match that pace.
That was also a lot more Taio than what you did earlier.
Yeah. So bear in mind, like, the first row of my inventory, that's still the inventory I started the game with, and the bear nut in my inventory is the one I started the game with. I just buy a bunch of stuff and go for the rest of the game, so I don't sell that, and stuff is starting to, like, get to the point where it's going to be expiring, etc. Let's just skip ahead to here. Interesting routing deviation here, so... How many times have you ever seen me do this in a run? Like, why am I leaving like this? And then going up here and picking up a bear nut? Like, what? Like, very suspicious routing choice. I don't know what that's about. Sasuke just goes through as normal. I'm just gonna go straight through to, Dain, I guess. Or the, No, the ghost room, yeah.
I just appreciate the fact that you're just casually calling Sabata Sasuke, like not blinking an eye.
Yeah. I was super grateful to be able to get favorable solo win there, and then these things can just, like, I'm not going to speak. Just I don't like these things.
This is the greatest Naruto fan game. We have Naruto, we have Sasuke.
He's even running like Naruto, innit? Alright, let's go see the boss fight.
Wait, your split sound is you?
Wait, what?
When you get like a gold split, there's the ain't it or something like that. Sorry, anyways.
I don't know.
Memes from your stream, my apology.
Oh yeah, play around movement again. Because again, there's nothing really to do during downtime.
This has to be my favorite fight of the game. The music's great, the boss is great.
Yeah, it's very good. It's just a shame that you don't get to hear more of the music because it's over as quick as it is. Now, unfortunately, this I do know now is a pretty imperfect strat that I actually use here, so this fight will be reworked in a future version, but, like, yeah, it is what it is. Scroll the camera down so that the dark orbs get off screen sooner and don't lag the game. And then again, like, camera scrolling in between all of these hits when closing out the fight, and that's really not trivial to do because you can't scroll the camera down and keep facing up. So I'm needing to scroll the camera down and then let go of it and face up long enough so that I can do each hit upwards, and I'm needing to do that in rapid sequence each hit. Here.
I'm also surprised his hitbox didn't hit you there.
Yeah, it's a little suspect, the hitbox, for sure. Like, it's kind of displaced from where you'd expect it. So, you wanted to see some tarot card use. I can definitely skip to that as we're closing out. This is very close to the end. So, you may remember this customer who killed me in the RTA run. But what if you could just do this instead? Bam, fight over.
Yep. It's a lot faster than earlier.
Yep, because the tower inflicts your damage, your level times 8 to every enemy on the screen. And these couple of enemies, the sandworm and the serpent, that have multiple segments, each of those segments gets hit for the increased damage. So you can just chunk these multi-segment bosses almost from full health in a single attack. The caveat here is the buff that I have on here, the bear nut, it's a pretty rare item that you only really have a couple of copies of in the entire game unless you really want to go out of your way for them. This prevents you from taking all damage for 15 seconds because the tower also hurts you. Like, using the tower, if you don't have damage mitigation, it will just kill you from full health. You can't use this without a bear nut. And we'll very quickly just go to the remaining boss fights. So, Lich.
The fact that you can just slice right through those balls that you had to dodge in RTA is impressive.
And that you can just stand right next to the lightning and not care that it's going off right in your face, yeah.
I love how you're in front of him getting back attacks.
Yeah, it's, again, like, the game really doesn't care if you're actually physically behind an enemy, it just cares if you're quote-unquote facing in the right direction. Yeah, I wish I could get a one-cycle serpent. I wish I could get a fight that doesn't just, like, down the stream entirely. All I need to do is this. Oh, those are wimpy hits, like, that's not doing anything. But we can just use the tower again.
Oh, you got a second one, I didn't see.
Yep. And it jumps once and then it's dead. This also has the added benefit of, so in order for my items to survive this long, like the bear nut in the starting inventory and the solar nuts that I use in this dungeon to regain energy, it's not possible whatsoever for your items to survive this long without rotting. The only way that I've been able to do that is by minimizing the sun exposure at completely non-essential times. The trade-off of that is that you end up with very little balance in the solar station, and that is compounded when the task is so much shorter itself. So as I get into the last floor here, you may, like, you can see here, right, I'm pulling up into Lich Plus's floor. this is a really energy intensive floor where you need to do a lot of puzzle solving. There's just a lot of stuff you need to do, right? I have like no energy. And as I pull up to the solar station here, like, oh dear, it doesn't really look like I have a lot of energy here either. So like, how do you even deal with this? Like, I have no energy reserves that I can pull from, and this is like the last floor of the game. We can gradually squeeze a bit. We can perfectly get around enemies on corners, and we can, again, any opportunity there is with these solar bamboo, we can just try and squeeze some more energy drops, and it's surprising how much you can get.
You technically gain a bit while you're in that coffin, right?
A little bit, yeah, but it is
really
not enough to go by.
Yeah, fair.
And so somehow gone from having like an empty energy bar to having almost a full energy bar, from having basically no solar balance to actually draw from, also play around movement. Why not?
I love platform cycles.
We are kind of, running out of time here, but if you do want to watch the task that's in its entirety, we do have it on YouTube, of which you can see Dracodan and all of his glory in passing.
Oh yeah, and he also streams attempts live on his Twitch channel. I'm not okay. It is Dracodan without an underscore or anything at the end.
Now it is, yeah, thankfully. Thanks Twitch for finally allowing, after years, for people to actually change account names. Awesome. Oh yeah, and this was the final boss. I figured I could skip to this quickly because it's over really, really, really fast, and it's done as Black Django without sunscreen because, like, the boss is gonna die before I do. It's no problem.
I love how you keep turning off the lights so you see, like, the invincible mode.
Yeah, like, it's pretty fitting that, like, you end the game here, like, he's in his completely immortal state, and you get through here to, like, final anime cutscene time. And again, it starts like this as well, like, oh no, there's no sunlight, like, what do you do? And then just turn it on at the last second for the final charge.
If you don't have it when it actually gets or prompts for that, is it instant game over?
You have the 10-second countdown, but if you fail the 10-second countdown, then you get a bad ending, yeah.
Okay.
And then the credits roll and you see your final in-game time. So, like, I mean, you said my 146 was pretty good or whatever, but, I mean, I wish I could get a 128.
Jeez.
It's very quick.
And at less than half the energy.
Yes, that is a big distinction as well, for sure, yeah.
Good memory.
We don't have time to watch it again. I'm sorry. I wish we could, but we can't do that. I've imposed long enough already, and thank you all very much for having us along for this. This has been a lot of fun, and yeah, this definitely has been a passion project of mine lately, so I'm very glad to be able to showcase it on this show. Thank you very much, Amber, and thank you, Funk, for joining me as well. I'm very glad to have you along.
And thank you, Dracodan, for pushing Boktai to the limit. Like, you have taken it so far in so little time.
Now I just need to get a 144, and then it's like, maybe I can actually learn a new speed game at some point. I don't know.
Imagine.
We'll see.
Do you have any last shout-outs, the two of you? Do you have any last shout-outs you want to make as we wrap up?
I can pretty much just reiterate my shout-outs to the Boktai speedrunning community. Like, everyone's been great. Yeah, please, if you're all interested, the Discord will be linked on the game leaderboard page on speedrun.com, and everyone is just so helpful. As far as people who directly help with the task working project, Dr. Hell, Rafi, Shanef, Coalescence were like the big players in helping me put this together. Absolutely couldn't have done this project without them, so thank you guys very much for making this such an enjoyable experience, and thanks especially to Funk for being along for this.
And it's separate kind of to all this is, obviously to Hideo Kojima and the original devs at Konami. They did a wonderful job on this game.
Absolutely, I agree. Unironically, one of my favorite games of all time.